Ever since I was a kid, my favorite part of Easter was the long-anticipated hunt for candy-filled, delicious eggs. My parents would always make a big deal out of it with a dozen clues scattered around the woods behind our house, each more complex than the last. In hindsight, they were probably ridiculously easy, but to my 10-year-old self, I felt incredibly intelligent solving them. As I grew older, I had little time for the annual Easter hunts. I either had college or work or dates. It dawned on me that an era of my life had passed, but I still felt nostalgic each year as the holidays came around. But then I found a dark web forum, specifically designed for these kids of hunts and mysteries. Though they weren't exactly centered around Easter, they had an annual competition around that time, one usually taking place online, meaning all of us basement dwellers could partake. They were a great deal of fun and significantly more complex than the ones I dealt with as a child. I loved it, and though I wasn't the brightest of the bunch, I did all right. Through that forum, I made a couple of great friends, both better than myself, Lewis and Robbie. We'd never met, but we'd formed our own little group, joining competitions but never winning. But it wasn't about the prize. It was about the thrill of chasing after new riddles, never knowing exactly what lay ahead. The community wasn't large, probably holding little more than 30 active players, but we were all more or less friendly with each other. Then, in the spring of last year, we were all invited to the site's first actual treasure hunt. We'd all have to show up in person, and we'd be divided into teams between 3 and 5 people. Obviously, I stuck with my friends, and only 15 people actually agreed to the in-person challenge. But needless to say, the hype was real. We would all be picked up and brought to a non-disclosed location. It meant we had to spend a few hours in the back of an uncomfortable truck. It was all part of the game, to give us the most intense experience. But based on the site's prior reputation and quality of games, we weren't in doubt. Each time we would be transported separately, meaning I had some time to get to know my team face to face. We practically knew everything about each other already, but to see them was a whole other deal. "Zach, is that really you?" Lewis called out as the driver put him inside the truck alongside me. I gave him a big hug, finally able to meet one of my best friends in person. We got to talking, eagerly awaiting the arrival of Robbie, who'd be the last pickup before we headed to the games. Though the 3 of us couldn't see where we were going, we could feel the road getting bumpier as time went on, which meant they were taking us away from the city. I felt a bit nervous, but the anxiety was quickly extinguished by the excitement. After 5 hours on the road, we were finally there. As we jumped out, we were greeted by a beautiful, mountainous view with lush, green forest as far as the eye could see. Behind the truck stood a massive facility, looking partially like a warehouse that had been quickly set up. It must have cost millions upon millions to bring everything out there, which was odd, considering it had all stemmed from a dark web page. The waiting area looked like any other lobby with a desk and a receptionist. There were no other teams there, but a screen held their name on a high score list, showing they had all already attempted the game. "Where are the other teams?" Robbie asked. "Finished already?" They were disqualified after failing various rooms. At this point, Team 5 had the best score, the receptionist said. I peeked at the screen, seeing the list of teams and how far they each made it. Team 1, Room 4. Team 2, Room 7. Team 3, Room 3. Team 4, Room 8. Team 5, Room 9. Team 6, Pending. "How many rooms are there?" I asked. "Just 10, she said with a smile. "Are you ready?" We looked at each other. We knew we weren't the best of the bunch, and if each group before us had failed, we didn't exactly feel confident. "We're ready," Lewis said. With that, the woman escorted us into the first room. It was a plain room covered in white panels, only interrupted by a numerical keypad, a camera to observe us, and a timer that was counting down from 5 minutes. "You have 5 minutes per room before the penalty kicks in," the woman said. "What penalty?" I asked. "I think it's better if we let that be a surprise," she said with a smile before closing the door. We looked around the room for loose panels and a way out. But then, the white panel started blinking in a fixed pattern, always in a different color. "Hey, look at this," Robbie said, as he pulled up what looked like a piece of tinted glass. He held it up against the blinking lights. It was a filter, and by looking through it, Numbers were revealed in the middle of the colorful lights. "I see all the numbers, but which order do they go in?" Robbie asked. "I've seen a similar puzzle before. I guess we're supposed to put them according to the electromagnetic spectrum. Try blue, green, yellow, red." In that order, the code turned out to be 7364, which stopped the lights and opened the door into the next room. "That wasn't too bad," Lewis said. The next room wasn't too hard either. It was a generator room with an empty fuse box. Our task was to put the right fuses in the right places within 5 minutes. Only Lewis made a mistake, giving him a firm but seemingly harmless shot. "Fuck! Escape rooms aren't supposed to hurt," he called out. He took a breath while he finished the puzzle, gaining us access to the third room. It looked like a hyperbaric chamber used to house divers working under oil rigs. As the door closed behind us, our ears popped from the sudden increase in pressure. "Wow, that's a bit too realistic," I said. "And what's that?" Robbie said as he pointed to what looked like a patch of blood. "Blood? That can't be real, right?" I asked. The timer had already started, and a barometer hanging on the wall was casually letting us know that the pressure was increasing. "Hey, Rob, you used to go diving, right?" I asked. "Yeah, why?" "How much pressure can a human body take?" I asked. He peeked over at the increasing pressure. "That's really bad. With the way the pressure is increasing, we'll be dead in 5 minutes," he said. My ears were hurting, and though the rooms were creative, the blood and the increasing pressure was all too real. We started waving at the cameras, futilely begging to be let out as the timer ticked towards 0. Let's just do the puzzle." The puzzle itself wasn't all that complicated. It was just a set of gears and valves that had to be put in the right locations. Within 2 minutes, we'd solved the puzzle, by which time the pressure was already on the brink of physically incapacitating us. We stumbled into the next room, the sudden drop in pressure causing us to collapse. "The game will only end when you die, or if you complete all 10 rooms," a voice said over the speaker. "You are now in the break room. You have 10 minutes to rest before entering the next chamber." "No, fuck this. Let us out," Lewis called out. "Enjoy the break. Don't forget to enter the next chamber afterwards," the woman said over the speakers. "We gotta find a way out of here," Lewis said, still not able to stand up properly. It took us about 5 minutes just to recover, at which point we tried to tear the room apart, desperately looking for a way out, to no avail. "It's pointless. Look at all this. You don't think they secured all the exits?" Robbie argued. "So we just play along? That blood in the pressure chamber wasn't fake. It belonged to one of the groups," I shot back. "Do you have a better plan?" Robbie asked. The timer had already ran out, at which point the walls of the room started closing in on us. We had less than a minute to escape. With great trepidation, we entered the fourth room. It looked like a carbon copy of a high school classroom, full on with the gum-covered tiny desks and a poorly cleaned blackboard. We looked around, trying to quickly figure out the tasks, but the only feasible way out appeared to be 2 buttons that looked like light switches. One was stuck, apparently requiring a key to open, and another that activated black lights. Then the timer started once again. "Screw this!" Lewis called out. The black lights lit up the blackboard, showing what looked like a random arrangement of letters. "Are those anagrams?" Robbie asked. "I don't think so," I replied. I quickly looked over them. Knowing anagrams fairly well, I could immediately tell that the words weren't mixed up. All of them were either 3, 4, or 5 letters in length. Half a minute had already ticked away, at which point, a few of the panels in the ceiling fell off. Spikes fell down from the ceiling, almost hitting Lewis in the shoulder. "Oh God!" he yelled. It superficially cut his arm, causing a few drops of blood to fall to the ground. That's when I noticed all the outlines on the ground. Clearly blood splatters lit up in the black lights. They'd been poorly cleaned up, probably to let us know about the consequences of failure. In the chaos, another 30 seconds passed, and another few of the ceiling panels fell to the ground, letting spikes shoot towards the floor. "Come on!" Robbie yelled. "We have to get out of here!" I took another look at the blackboard when I realized a pattern. If they were all 3, 4, or 5 letters, they could be numbers. I got it. It's a mixture between a Caesar cipher and an anagram. Shiftgram? I don't know what they're called. It was easy enough once I only saw 2 equal words with 5 letters, which could either be 8 or 7, but there were no repeating letters, which meant they both had to be 8. Based on that, I was quickly able to figure out the code with a full minute to spare. 94838, I shouted. The code was correct, but even though Robbie had already input the code, the counter would keep going until we left the room. At 30 seconds, another few spikes shot from the ceiling, one shooting through Lewis's chest. He let out a whimper before immediately dying from shock. "Lewis!" we both called out, but it was too late. "Come on," Robbie said as he dragged me away from the oncoming spikes. We just about survived the fourth room, but Lewis was gone. Still, we didn't have time to rest. There were still 6 more rooms remaining. The two of us collapsed to the floor in a mixture of disbelief and exhaustion. We'd barely escaped with our lives, but with just 2 of us left, we knew the next set of rooms would be an almost impossible task. "We gotta go back for Lewis," I called out in shock, knowing it wouldn't make a difference. Robbie sat in silence, just observing the new room. I'd been too numb to notice where we were, but once the adrenaline started to fade, I quickly understood what the next puzzle would be. It was Lewis's bedroom, at least the little we could recognize from the background of his webcam we'd seen. The wall was filled with more than a dozen vintage posters from his favorite movies and video games. He'd always been kind of a nerd, even more so than us. "How did they make this?" Robbie said in shock. I don't know. Maybe they were watching our streams, or maybe they've been inside our rooms. Do you think the other groups went through this exact room? I asked back. "I think they personalized some of the rooms," he said as he just shrugged in defeat. "So what do we do?" I'd already seen that we needed a 4-digit code to unlock the door. I figured the code would be the year of his favorite movie release. The problem was that he had several. I couldn't say for sure which poster was the correct one. "I think it's Alien. So, 1979? I half asked, half stated. Robbie typed in the code, causing a beep to emit throughout the room. "That ain't it. How about..." Before Robbie could finish that sentence, the timer cut down a whole minute, a clear penalty for inputting the wrong code. With a total of 5 minutes, we'd only have 4 attempts before the final wrong code would kill us. "Try A New Hope," I called out. 1977? It was another mistake, cutting away a second minute. "Try The Godfather," I shouted. Robbie input 1972, which finally seemed to be the correct code. The door opened, and we quickly moved on to the 6th room. "What now?" Robbie said, sounding more annoyed than confused. The room was completely dark, illuminated by the dimmest of lights, a hanging light bulb that barely lit up the outline of the room. The flawless, black walls didn't help the situation. "Do you know what we're supposed to do?" I asked. He just walked up and down the walls, feeling for any imperfection. He let out a yelp as he tried to cross over, falling to the ground and hitting his knee. "F***," he groaned. "There's a hole in the middle." Even with a light, the hole was practically invisible. It stretched down an unseen amount into the darkness below. It was just barely enough for a grown man to crawl inside, but knowing the theme of the game, I knew what had to be done. "You think one of us has to go down there?" I asked. I knew Robbie suffered at least a significant case of claustrophobia, and with such a narrow, dark place, I knew it would be an impossible task for him. He didn't even respond, and despite the darkness, I could tell his face had turned pale from the realization. "I can't do it. I just can't." As he uttered those words, a strange flushing sound could be heard from beneath us. The timer had already counted a minute of time away, and one of us had to go down the hole. It was going to be me, whether I liked it or not. "It's all right, Rob. I'll do it," I said. I put my legs over the edge of the hole, trying to feel for a bottom. All the while, the noise of flushing water kept getting closer. As I stretched out my legs, the surface of ice-cold water touched my leg, and I realized that with a decreasing timer, the water was rising. "You sure there's nothing else up there?" I asked. "I'm sure. I checked each wall. There's nothing." The water had already reached my knees. Our method of death would be drowning, unless I could find the opening to the next room. So I jumped into the ice-cold water and dove down into the darkness. It was a long tube, with barely enough place for me to turn around, and not a single shimmer of light to guide my way. I could hold my breath for an absolute maximum of 2 minutes, but that might not be enough. It took me almost a minute just to reach the end, where I found a lever. I pulled it, which switched on lights that illuminated the tunnel I'd swam through. I could feel the oxygen drain from my body, so I turned around and prayed I would make it in time. Once I reached the end of the tube, the room had been half filled with water, but a small hole in the upper part of the room had been opened. As the water reached a high enough level, we could easily swim through, allowing us to enter the 7th room. "Thank you, Zach. I don't think I would have made it if I had to go down there," Robbie said. "No problem." I managed to get out between labored breaths. "Where are we now?" "Room 7, he said. "Didn't one of the teams die here?" I asked. He nodded. "I think so." The current room only had a single button on the wall with a handprint. Without hesitation, Robbie walked over to press the button. He put his hand on it, and a door opened up on the other side. "That was easy," he said and let go of the button. The door closed again, and he put his hand back on it. The door only remained open as long as one of us kept our hand on the button, which meant that either there was another solution, or one of us had to stay behind. Before we could discuss it any further, a hatch in the ceiling opened up, and a severed arm dropped down. It had clearly been there for a while, half rotted. It quickly dawned on us that it must have belonged to one of the previous teams. "Oh God!" was all I could get out, but Robbie wasn't as put off. He just picked the arm up and held it against the button. Nothing happened. The arm was long since cold. Then a second object fell from the hatch in the ceiling. It was an axe. Robbie and I just looked at each other in disbelief, but time was ticking down, and it was clear what we had to do. "Just do it," Robbie said. "I can't," I said back. "Either one of us sacrifices our arms, or we both die in here." Then a clunk could be heard, and a wall slowly started to descend over the only door in the room. If we didn't exit soon, it would be sealed in forever. "Do it now!" Robbie yelled. I picked up the axe, and Robbie lay down and put his left arm out. I wrapped a tourniquet around his upper arm to prevent as much bleeding as possible. Then I lifted the axe. A loud clunk could be heard as I struck down against the hard floor. The axe was polished enough to cut right through. Robbie let out a blood-curdling scream in agony, but we didn't have time for sympathy. I picked up his arm and put it in the stand. The door opened, remaining so as the wall kept descending. Robbie had passed out from the pain, so I dragged him through to the other side. "Come on, Rob, wake up," I said. The room was identical to the former in terms of design, but rather than having a hand scan, it had a bucket with the scale measuring up to 1 liter. It had blood stains on the inside, which made it painfully obvious what we had to do. "I get it," Robbie said as he saw the bucket. He'd regained consciousness, but was still lying on the floor. He'd already lost a lot of blood despite the tourniquet, but we both knew there wasn't another option. I helped him up and loosened the tourniquet. He held his stump over the bucket, and I watched his face turn pale as an entire liter of blood filled the bucket. With that, the door opened, and I did my best to stop the bleeding again. "I'm probably not going to make it," he said as I held him up. He was too weak to stand on his own. His breath was labored, and his speech slurred. I carried him into the 9th room, knowing not a single team had made it further. It was a comfortable room, a modern cabin with nice chairs and an active fireplace. There was a man sitting in one of them, one who'd clearly been dead for some time. Like Robbie, he was missing an arm. Sacrificed it in the 7th room to proceed. In his remaining hand, he held a note. I put Robbie down in the other chair before I pried it out of his dead grasp and started reading. "My friends all died between the 3rd and 5th room. I tried to save them, but I couldn't. They just weren't fast enough. I kept pushing forward alone, praying to be let out at the end, praying for it all to be little more than a sick prank. I had to cut my own arm off with a damn axe. I thought that would be enough of a sacrifice. Joke's on me. There's no way to leave this place alone. I'll save you the trouble of solving this puzzle. To leave this room, someone has to die in one of these chairs. I'll be dead soon, but there won't be anyone left to leave once the door opens. I just hope my death keeps the door open for the next group that comes through. I hope my death won't be for nothing. Good luck, Ryan." I'd seen his name on the forums. He was probably the most experienced of us all, and he'd solved all 9 rooms, only to realize that he couldn't escape without a team. I looked over to Robbie, who'd fallen unconscious again. His pulse was rapid but weak. He was inches away from death. "I'm done for," he whispered as he temporarily regained consciousness. "Just leave." He passed back out again, and though he hadn't died yet, I couldn't get him to wake back up. He didn't know that the only way out was for one of us to die, and at that point telling him would seem crueler than just letting him die in peace. He'd already saved my life twice during the last 2 rooms, but the thought of facing the 10th and final room alone was another horrifying beast all on its own. As Robbie started fading into the afterlife, the fireplace turned around, revealing a room. If I lifted Robbie up, it would just close again. So I promised myself to send help as soon as I got out, even though I knew no one could arrive in time to save him. "Thank you for saving my life," I said as I walked away from my half-dead friend. No sooner had I taken a step into the next room than the fireplace turned to close the wall once again. Robbie had been left behind. The 10th room looked exactly like the lobby where we'd first entered the facility, except for the missing receptionist. There were no missing parts. The entrance door was locked, but not exactly secured. It was just a normal wooden piece separating me from the outside world. Before I could decide what to do, the monitor turned itself on. Instead of displaying the high scores as it had last time, it just showed a colorful congratulations banner. There was an envelope on the counter where the receptionist had been sitting, addressed to me. I opened it up and started reading the letter inside. Dear contestant, you've made it to the final room, the one you will spend the rest of your life inside, however long that may be. You should be proud to know that you're the only one to have made it this far, but at what cost? The 10th room is your life, and you can go on living it in whichever way you see fit, but the knowledge of the sacrifice made so that you could live will forever weigh upon your soul. Live well, contestant. The door opened, and I was let back outside to the real world. Without a car to get me home, the walk would take 2 days before I even reached signs of civilization. I alerted the police, who were hesitant to believe me, but they still agreed to check it out. But by the time they got there, the entire facility had been emptied out. All that remained was the barren inside of what looked like an ordinary warehouse. Lewis and Robbie had both died, and I will live the rest of my life with the knowledge that it could have been me. I woke up in a room with no windows, cinder block walls, and a solid metal door. The dim light was just enough to see bloodstains on the walls. Parallel lines of dried brown blood around the door looked like fingers that had dug for escape until the flesh had given way. I could feel my breathing become more hurried as I studied this cell. My cell. What was I doing here? Everything was foggy. I could remember work yesterday, but then things got foggy. Glimpses of things. A chandelier, music, dark red wine in a glass. What was I forgetting? I closed my eyes tight, hoping that would help, but nothing more came to me. I opened them again when I heard footsteps outside the cell door. There was the sound of someone typing on a keypad outside of the room. I felt frozen. There was a hissing sound from above me. I looked up and saw that there were small valves in the corners of the ceiling. Lightly colored gas was shooting out of them. What the f*** are you doing? Hey, I know you're out there. What is this gas? I hollered. The gas began filtering down and I could feel myself getting woozy. Please, listen to me. Stop this. What's going on? I screamed. If the person outside my room answered, I never heard it. The dizziness took over and I collapsed on the floor. When I woke up again, it felt like my left arm was on fire. I looked over at it and nearly screamed. I had stitches on what looked like a surgical incision, and the area around the wound was red and swollen. Gingerly, I reached out with my right hand and touched it. It was incredibly tender. There was some scabbing over the wound. What had they done to me? What the f*** had they done to me? As I stared at my arm in horror, I heard footsteps returning to my door. In terror, I looked up at the gas nozzles again. This time, there was no sound typing on keys. Instead, with a loud squeak, a small flap on the bottom of my door slipped open and a tray of food was shoved through. I went over to it and picked it up. Some grayish-brown sludge heaped up in one compartment of the tray. There was a hard roll and a mushy apple to go along with it. The f*** is this? I said out loud. Eat it or don't, a gravelly voice said from the other side of the door. I don't give two shits, stupid f***. And with that, footsteps slowly moved away from my cell door. I spent what felt like days in the cell. I periodically got food. My arm seemed to be slowly healing. Still hurt like a motherfucker, but I did have unauthorized surgery, so that's hardly a surprise. One time, the gravelly voice that was attached to the footsteps outside my door asked if I wanted to get some fresh air. Please, I responded. Tough shit, he said, laughing. Dumbass. Screw you! I screamed. I slammed on the metal door until my hands ached and my surgery scar began to ooze. The man laughed as he walked away. After 4 more meals had passed, I got gassed again. When I awoke, I was in a different room. One wall was all metal bars, with a door set into it. I started walking around to get my brain fully running again, and shortly after that, a large man with a beer belly and plenty of muscle walked up to the bars. Showtime, he said in the same gravelly voice I had grown accustomed to hearing outside my cell door. What do you mean? I asked. In about 10 minutes, you're going to leave this room and enter our little Gladiator arena. You're going to perform for our friends watching via webcam over the dark web. They've all paid a fair chunk of money to watch this. In your left arm, we placed a device that works a fair bit like a taser. Whenever a signal is sent to it, it blasts a shock. It'll feel like this. He put his hand in his pocket, and the next thing I knew, all the nerves in my left arm were on fire. I screamed. It ended shortly afterwards, but I felt raw. The pain was unforgettable. It's a gladiator arena, so obviously you'll be fighting. If you choose not to fight,
We will pulse that shocker in your arm every 5 minutes for the next 3 days. You'll beg us to kill you. Also, if the viewers pay a sizable donation, they get to shock you at a time of their choosing. Money has power.
What kind of f***ed up bullshit is this?
The kind that makes us a lot of money. Other than being required to fight, there are no rules. You keep going until someone dies. Got it?
I'm not f***ing fighting anyone, I said. My arm sizzled with radiating agony. F***, I moaned as soon as the pain was over.
You will be fighting. Now, take off your clothes.
What the f***?
No clothes, no handholds, no secrets, no bullshit. You walk in with nothing, you walk out with nothing. Now, take off your clothes or else I'll fry your arm again.
I couldn't handle another dose of that pain again just yet. I started undressing.
Faster, the man growled. You are down to 6 minutes. If you're late, I fry your arm.
I hustled, taking off shoes, socks, shirt, and pants. I stood there in my underwear.
Seriously, dipshit?
I said naked.
I don't care if you're embarrassed. Take your clothes off or I'll set your arm on fire.
I pulled off my underwear and stood naked in my cell.
Better,
the man said.
Walk to the front of the cell, turn your back to me, and bend over.
What the f***? I was interrupted by a sharp blast of agony. I walked to the edge of the cell, put my back against the bars, and hesitated.
Do it now or get the pain,
he said while putting on a latex glove. I bent forward.
This is the cavity search to make sure there are no potential weapons hidden on you. If you move, I will finish this exam with a tire iron.
There was a squirt of a cold gel, and then I felt a gloved finger pushed against my anus. F***, I yelped.
Move and it'll be worse. I'll make sure of it.
I took a deep breath and steadied myself. The finger went inside me. I could feel it moving around, poking and prodding. I felt tears beginning to leak down my face. I didn't want to show them my tears. They didn't deserve to see them, but I couldn't stop. I began to sob. Finally, I felt him leave my anus.
Stand up and turn around, he said.
I saw he was putting on a clean glove.
Open your mouth. Bite me, and I will rip your motherfucking jaw off. Don't test me.
Flashlight in one hand, the man shone the light into my open mouth and poked around with his gloved hand, occasionally wiggling teeth to see if they were securely attached. No secrets.
All right, you're cleared. I'm going to unlock your door so you can head to the arena. You will walk in front of me, and I will guide you. You try anything, and I will leave the arm zapper on while I piss on your shaking body. Clear?
Yeah, I gasped, trying to shake off the humiliating exam.
Then step to the back of your room.
He walked to the door, unlocked it with a set of keys on his belt, and then stepped away.
Step out and turn right,
he said. I did as I was told and kept walking forward until I came across a large tub of something that was thick and vaguely yellow. I felt a hard shove from behind and yelped as I was launched into the tub. It flooded around me like a thick, cloying bath. It wasn't deep, and as soon as I got my bearings, I got my feet under me and stood up. I gasped, wiping the fluid from my face. I heard my captor laughing.
The look on your face, he said between chuckles. You dumbass.
What is this shit?
It's some cheap-ass olive oil, like the gladiators and wrestlers used to use. But we didn't have time for you to apply it to yourself, so I sped things up. Don't like it? Then don't take so long next time. Now get down the hallway. That door opens to the arena.
I walked down the hallway, feeling the fear building in my chest. The door was solid bands of wood with a thick metal handle on it.
Open it and step through.
I stepped out onto sand. It was a small circular arena, maybe the size of a bedroom, with high concrete walls enclosing the sandy fighting space. There were bench seats above the walls, and in each stood a small camera. My audience. I heard the door behind me shut, and with a grinding metallic thud, the lock engaged. I was trapped. On the other side of the arena door, another door opened. A stick-thin man, shiny from oil on his skin, was pushed through the door before it shut behind him and locked. He looked ancient, and he was unsteady on his feet. His skin was covered with age spots and he had a slight tremor in his hands. This was who I was fighting? He walked over to me, and I noticed that he didn't have a surgery mark on his arm. What the hell? Look, old man, I don't want to hurt you, but I don't think I have much choice, I said.
You shithead,
he wheezed out. And then my arm lit up. It caught me off guard and I fell to my knees. The pain let up after a second, just in time for me to look up and see a bony fist smack me directly in the eye. The old man wasn't as weak as he looked. I staggered and caught myself with my hand, and the old man took advantage of my pause with a firm kick to my stomach. Gasping for air, I rolled away from the old man. I got enough distance to stand back up. Looking over, I saw my opponent was looking a bit drained, but he was working his way over to me. "What the f***, man?" I said. "I don't want to have to do this to you."
Hesitation is for little pieces of shit,
he said through panting breaths. "Dude!" Another shock, and I hit the ground this time. He stomped on my stomach. I screamed and lashed out right as the pain in my arm turned off. I swiped his leg and he hit the ground. Something cracked, and it was his turn to scream. I jumped over to him and straddled him, raining down punches until his face looked like pulp and he stopped making noise. With a final blast of pain in my arm, I fell on the ground. This time, the pain didn't stop, and I felt myself about to pass out. I heard thunks and footsteps, and my jailer stood above me.
not bad for a nugget.
He said.
Free me.
I gasped through the pain, and then I passed out. I woke up in my cell. There was a steak sitting on a plate next to me with a note.
Eat up. Round 2 is soon.
All I could do was scream. Hey everyone, if you enjoy these stories, be sure to check out the Dr. No Sleep podcast by clicking the Spotify link in the description below. There you will find more nightmarish horror stories not yet featured on my channel. For iPhone users, just search Dr. No Sleep in the search bar on Apple Podcasts. Now back to the story. I glanced down at the sharks below. One slip would mean my certain death. How did I get myself in this mess? I should have never clicked on that link. It all started with me sitting at home, in my room, on my computer. I found out how to access the dark web and loved to explore it. There are whole worlds of information and entertainment hidden from the rest of the internet, only available for those who know where to look. For me, my adventure started with a .onion site I found that was simply titled The Game. It was similar in design to YouTube, with comments and arguments. The only difference was that it only had a handful of creators, each dealing with a different type of game show-esque program. One felt like Big Brother, with people trapped in a windowless house, doing the same ridiculous crap as they do on the original show. The only difference was that the loser wasn't sent home, but rather into the basement. Whatever happened in the basement, it caused the other contestants a great deal of distress. It was never shown on camera, but it put a strange atmosphere throughout the house. Then there was the Wipeout-like show. It had the same challenges and obstacles, but the surroundings were so dark, as if it took place either at night or inside a dimly lit warehouse. Whenever someone got knocked out, it just fell into the darkness, never to be seen again. It was horrific, and the screams they let out as they fell were heartbreaking. Still, not a single commenter ever indicated that the shows were real. For all we knew, it was just a trick, stunts to make people worry. But even more than that, they were interesting. I could not stop watching them. I'd spent hours watching them, borderline addicted. I would comment, cheer on certain contestants, and make real bets with the other viewers. After a while, I started to garner some attention. I was getting pretty good at predicting the winners, and it pissed some of them off. I was making quite a bit of money for myself. Then, as the last season of the game ended, someone left me this comment. You've shown great promise as a predictor for the games. For the final episode, choose your winner and get the chance to receive a large monetary prize. All you have to do is to respond with the name of your predicted champion. I input who I thought would win and waited for the final episode. Alas, I was wrong, and the game ended, leaving me disappointed without a promised prize. That's all I remember before everything went dark. When I woke up, I found myself tied to a chair in a dark room. There were strange men wearing colorful masks walking around me, pouring buckets of what I first thought was water over me. It was only once I felt my body and smelled around that I realized it was partially rendered animal fat, making my entire body slippery as hell. What are you doing? I asked. You're a candidate for the game, one guy in a mask said. I don't know how they got me. Whether they drugged me or just hit me in the head with something hard, I didn't know. Nor did I understand how they knew where I lived. Which game? I asked. You'll see, he said as he untied me and tossed me onto the ground. By the time I got to my feet, the mysterious men had vanished, and I was left in an empty room, only accompanied by the vague sounds of cheering coming from behind a door. I didn't want to go out there. I'd always thought the game was rigged, a voluntary game show full of people trying to make their names known in the darkest corners of the internet. Had I known they were kidnapping people, I never would have left a comment. I decided then and there to stay, to refuse the audience my forced admission to the competition. As time went on, the crowd's cheers turned to anger. They started booing louder and louder. I could hear individual yells. "Where is this man?" Another yelled. "I paid good money for these tickets. Let's get this show started." I began inspecting the room. It was a small square space about 6 feet long and 6 feet wide. From what I could feel, there was one door in front of me. This is where the screams of the crowd were coming from. I checked the ceiling for any way out, but there were only 2 tiny holes for ventilation. I was stuck in here. The only way out was through the door. I decided to take a deep breath and to open the door in front of me. A bright light hit my face and temporarily blinded me. As my eyes adjusted, I noticed a platform in front of me. On the platform were 3 other contestants. All were covered in the same animal fat-like substance. One was a girl. She couldn't have been older than 25. She looked horrified and had a dazed look on her face. The other contestant looked to be in his late 30s. He seemed calm, cool, and collected. The last man was a bit older, probably in his late 50s. He also seemed indifferent about the whole situation. If this obstacle course was anything like what I saw in the videos, I knew the older gentleman wouldn't stand a chance. As I walked out of the platform towards the other players, the audience boomed with excitement. Even though the audience seemed to be right next to the platform, you couldn't see them. The only thing that was illuminated was the platform we were all standing on. A loudspeaker came on.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is our monthly Wipeout contest. This is a special edition because we chose 4 of our lucky livestream viewers as contestants. These 4 contestants have made a considerable amount of money betting on previous games. Let's see how well their knowledge helps them in actually completing the game for themselves.
The audience cheered wildly. The loudspeaker continued.
The rules are simple. The last player standing wins the competition and gets a $100,000 cash prize. The losers, well, their fate depends on what part of the game they mess up on. The first contestant is Brooke from North Carolina. Brooke, please make your way to the front of the platform.
Brooke nervously moved forward on the platform. The loudspeaker came back on.
Lights on, please.
In front of us, industrial lights came on and revealed the course in front of us. The announcer continued.
There are 4 red inflatable balls in front of you. The goal is to jump onto each one and to get to the next platform. If you fall, well, let's just say you don't want to find out. Okay, Brooke, let's get a move on.
Brooke stood there frozen in fear. She did not move a muscle. Minutes passed, and the crowd's cheers turned into boos. The announcer came back on.
Brooke, I'm going to give you 5 seconds. If you don't move, I will have to take matters into my own hands. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, Brooke, you asked for it.
All of a sudden, part of the platform rose up behind her and knocked her in the back. She was sent flying off into oblivion. Her screams faded into the darkness. Her fall seemed to last forever. All of a sudden, I heard a chilling thud. It sounded like bones breaking into a million pieces. My heart dropped out of my chest. I now realized that my fate was certain death if I did not complete this course. The horrific sound seemed to get the audience more excited. Cheers erupted. The host continued over the speaker.
Well, to our viewers at home that bet on Brooke, that is unfortunate. Hopefully our next contestant will perform slightly better. Next we have Dan from Florida, the Sunshine State. Let's see what you've got, Dan.
Dan was the man in his late 30s. He calmly stood a few feet back from the edge of the platform. He got a running start and landed on the first ball. He used his momentum from the first ball to land on the second ball, then to the third, and finally to the fourth ball. He jumped off the fourth ball perfectly onto the platform at the end. The announcer chimed in.
Wow, everyone give it up for Dan. That was a flawless run. Quite impressive, I may add. Okay, next up we have Bill from Idaho. Give it your best, Bill.
I was worried for Bill. I knew he didn't stand a chance. Bill tried Dan's approach. He stood a few feet back on the platform and got a running start. To my surprise, Bill nailed the first red ball. Just like Dan, he used his momentum from the first ball to catapult him to the second. He landed on the second ball, but lost his grip and slid off of it. Bill's yells echoed as he fell to his death. His fall was met by the same horrific sound as Brooke. The loudspeaker erupted.
Well, well, I didn't think Bill had it in him, but I thought he would at least make it past the second red ball. Okay, let's forget that mess. Up next, we have Patrick, also from Florida. Let's see what you've got.
I decided Dan's approach was the best way to go about this course. I stood a few feet back from the edge of the platform and got ready to go. I ran and jumped on the first ball. I kept going and continued to the second, then the third, and lastly the fourth. I jumped as hard as I could off the fourth ball and nearly knocked into Dan on the platform. The speaker came on.
Well done, Patrick. We've got some athletes on our hands, ladies and gentlemen. Everyone give it up for Dan and Patrick.
The crowd cheered and clapped. The announcer continued.
Let's move on to the next challenge, shall we? This one will be a test of pure strength. There will be 2 pull-up bars that each of you will need to hang on to. First one to let go is the loser, and last one standing will be crowned the champion.
Lights illuminated the next challenge in front of us. 2 metal pull-up bars extending from the ceiling appeared in front of us. I thought to myself, what is the worst that can happen? If we fall, we just land on the platform. Dan and I walked over to the bars, ready to grab onto them. The host began the countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go!
We both jumped up in unison and grabbed onto the bar. At that very second, the platform beneath us disappeared. I glanced down and noticed a giant pool below us. I thought if I fell, this can't be too bad. At that moment, I saw a fin, and another fin, and another, all circling about. I realized it was a pool of sharks. I glanced over at Dan, but he was too focused on holding on to notice. My adrenaline began pumping faster than ever. I needed to hold on. 30 seconds went by. I noticed Dan looking really tired. He was sweating profusely. I glanced down again and got another hard dose of adrenaline. Every time I looked down, it gave me more motivation to hold on. I don't even think Dan noticed the pool below us. I glanced over. Dan was losing his grip, and fast. One of his hands slipped off the bar. Only seconds passed, and his last hand lost its grip. He plummeted to the pool below. I glanced down in curiosity, but the platform already was below me again. I only heard Dan's screams for a few seconds before he was violently dragged underwater by the sharks. The host began speaking again.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a winner. Give it up for Patrick.
The audience began cheering. The host continued.
What a great job on the course. You won fair and square. You've done so well that our panel was thinking of bringing you back in the future. We have a tournament of champions every 2 years and think you would be a great competitor. Until then, you and your money will be delivered to your house.
Before I could even say a word, a cold needle was injected into my neck. Next thing I knew, I woke up in my bed. Next to me, on my nightstand, was $100,000 in cold hard cash. I can only pray I don't get kidnapped again for the Tournament of Champions. My name is Patrick, and the year is 2077. I've been a hacker in Night City for all my life. That's how I was able to afford this apartment that overlooks the city. I started out my career hacking ordinary people, ones that went to work and could barely afford rent. What can I say? They were the easiest targets. That was until I found out who the real villains were in the cesspool of a city. It was the corporations. They control all the power and wealth. Once I understood this, it changed my hacking strategy. Now I hack big businesses. Usually I'm just after their money, but sometimes I stumble across other things. By other things, I mean explicit photos and shocking messages. Both are great for blackmail. One day would completely change my hacking career forever. It shook me to my foundation and made me rethink my entire existence. The time was midnight. I preferred working at night because most corporate workers were sound asleep. I could hack different company systems before anyone was notified. I sat down at my desk and got to work. My routine usually started with logging onto the dark web. Yes, the dark web is ancient, but it still provides me a lot of helpful information. I belong to a site full of elite hackers. The site only allows the best hackers to join. It took me 8 years to get approved to be a member. The main goal of every member is to take from the rich and give to the poor, sort of like modern-day Robin Hoods. We also expose corruption along the way. We post sensitive information and communicate ideas that may help our exploits. One user on the site named Archangel posted a profile picture of the Militech CEO, Donald Lundy. Militech is a megacorporation specializing in weapons manufacturing and private military contracting. They are one of the largest weapon suppliers in the world. Under Donald Lundy's picture, it had all of his pertinent information, his full name, address, and employee ID number. Below his ID number it read, "Donald Lundy is a very corrupt and evil man. Feel free to do what you will with this information." This was all the data I needed to hack into his account. No way this could be real. Donald Lundy was one of the most powerful people in the world. Now all of his information was right in front of me to see. We are experienced hackers, but Archangel had to be one of the best to get this type of information. Under my secure network, I went to the Militech website. I clicked login and it prompted me for an employee ID number and a password. I typed in the ID number from before and left the password blank. This was the easy part. I had a brute force program that would test every possible combination for the password. At most, it would take 5 minutes to hack a complex password. I ran the program and in about 30 seconds, cracked the password. I now had access to classified information on Militech. There was an icon that read, "Board members, classified information." I clicked on the tab. My screen was redirected to a list of Militech projects and plans. This was it. I found the gold mine. There were 3 different headlines. The first read, "Exerting influence over gangs in Night City." The next article read, "Expanding our influence overseas." The last article was titled, "Damage Control After the Night City Holocaust." My heart dropped after I read the title of the last article. My grandparents were both killed in the Night City Holocaust. The incident happened in the year 2023. Militech and Arasaka had strongholds in the city. Arasaka is another megacorporation in the city. Without a national government at the time to hold the two accountable, there was constant fighting between them. They both wanted power and control. A nuclear bomb exploded in the headquarters of Arasaka. The blast incinerated 12,000 people. Another 250,000 died in the resulting aftermath. The two theories are that Militech got bloodthirsty, or that Arasaka nuked their own HQ to protect their corporate secrets. Now I'm beginning to think Militech was responsible for the bombing based on the article's title. I clicked on the headline. The article that loaded in front of me shocked me to the core. It read, "Dear Militech board members, as you know, a large part of Night City's population still believes we were responsible for the 2023 bombing at the Arasaka HQ. Of course we were responsible, but this has become a public PR nightmare for us. We need to aggressively pursue a public relations campaign that shines the light away from us. If we receive any bad press on the 2023 bombings, our future business plans and expansion may be halted." I couldn't believe what I had just read. Militech was directly responsible for the deaths of 250,000 citizens. Now I had an obligation. I must leak this information to the public and get the word out there. I grabbed a storage device and plugged it into my computer. This device allows me to extract every last bit of information from the website. I know people might not believe me just seeing the Militech bombing article, but hopefully there is something irrefutable within the website's database that makes it onto the device. The extraction was nearly done. The loading bar was nearly all the way there. A notification displayed across my screen. It said, "Extraction complete." A feeling of relief flooded my body. I was able to hack into one of the most secure websites in the world and steal information that could bring down one of the most powerful companies. My job here was just getting started. Now I needed to figure out how to safely leak the information. My thought process was abruptly stopped by a notification on my computer. It was a direct message from another user on the website. His username was Mike. My username was Donald, as that's whose account I was under. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Donald?" he asked. I tried to play dumb. "What are you getting at, Mike?" I asked back. "You imbecile. If anyone downloads information in the board member section, it flags every member. Now tell me, what are you planning on doing? I know you are the CEO and all, but for God's sake, Donald, you need to let the others know what your plans are before downloading anything on there." "Listen, Mike, I am not obligated to tell you anything. What I am using this information for is classified and needs to remain that way. You don't know anything, do you, Donald? Anytime information is extracted, it needs to be approved with a 2/3 majority amongst all the board members," Mike replied. I stayed silent with no response, probably a few seconds too long. Mike responded again. "You aren't Donald, are you? Whoever you are, you better delete all your hard drives and run. Run far, far away. If we find you, you will die a slow, agonizing, and painful death. If you release any of that information, the longer and more painful your death will be. I can promise you that." My heart dropped. I was compromised. I closed out of all my tabs and powered down my computer. I stood up from my desk. I walked over to my window. I glanced out at the city in front of me. Right before I was about to turn away, I noticed something in the window. It was a drone. It came right up to my window and faced me. A blinking red light told me that I was being recorded. I needed to run. I left all my belongings, as I knew they would be able to track me on my devices. I grabbed the memory stick with the incriminating information and bolted to the elevator and hit the ground floor. My mind was racing at 100 miles per hour. What options did I have? Where could I go? A faint memory came to my mind. It was a simple message I had remembered. A user posted it on the hacker's website. He said if we ever feared for our lives, to go to the abandoned Grand Metro station, go down the stairs to the tracks and make a left. Keep walking for a bit, and there will be a piece of plywood that has 999 spray painted in red on it. Remove the plywood and there will be a hatch. Open the hatch and enter the tunnel. After 5 minutes of walking through the city, I made it to the Grand Metro station. I quickly glanced around to make sure I wasn't being followed. I walked down the steps to the train tracks and made a left. After walking for about 1 minute, I came across the piece of plywood. Sure enough, it had 999 spray painted on it. I removed the piece of wood, and there was a hatch. I opened the hatch and traversed down the ladder. After getting a few rungs down, I closed the hatch on top of me. I got to the bottom of the ladder and looked around. The space was huge. There were high-tech computers and servers everywhere. The place was any hacker's dream. A man approached me. He said, "Welcome. I am glad you found the place. My codename is Archangel. You aren't going to be able to take Militech down by yourself. Let's take them down together." I shook his hand, and we got to work. Also, it turns out that most of you guys who watch me aren't actually subscribed. So if you like the content and want to support the channel, go ahead and hit the bell. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. Serial killers worldwide are connected by a hidden website, the dark web. Where do I even begin? My name is Dylan Reeves. Well, it all started for me during my sophomore year at college. I was an introvert and kept to myself. My anxiety was always an issue for me. Weed was the best remedy. It kept me sane. It allowed me to function normally in society. Without it, I don't know how I would operate. Unfortunately, weed was illegal at the time. About once a week, I had to go to this sketchy drug dealer's house to get my supply. His name was Chase. All the homes in his neighborhood either had boarded up windows or bars on them. I usually walked to Chase's house, since it was only 5 minutes from my dorm. One particular day, I walked to his house to pick up an ounce of weed. It was a gloomy winter day. During this particular walk, I felt this ominous feeling in the air, almost as if I knew something bad was going to happen. I passed this rundown house that I always thought was abandoned. To my surprise, someone was staring at me from one of the shattered windows. His appearance was rough. He had dirt all over his face and wore a tattered white beater. I made eye contact with him. He started to smile at me with these crazy eyes. I quickly picked up my pace and started jogging. I knocked on Chase's door, but he didn't answer. His car was in the driveway, and I wasn't taking any chances with the crazy guy outside, so I just helped myself in. After opening the door, I knew something was wrong. All the lights were off, and it was eerily silent. Suddenly, I heard Chase yell, "Hands up!" The lights turned on, and Chase was pointing an AK-47 at me. He said, "Jesus, kid, I almost shot you. You can't just come in like that, especially after..." Angry and frightened, I yelled, "What the hell, man? Especially after what?" He stopped and said, "Oh, it's nothing. Your weed is right here." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a Ziploc bag with the weed inside. Outside of the house, I heard a car accelerating around a corner. The tires were screeching. Chase yelled, "Get down!" I dropped to the floor. Next thing I knew, bullets were flying into the house from the car driving by. Then silence. We stayed on the floor motionless for the next hour. When it felt safe, I called my friend to pick me up and got the hell out of there. The police never even showed up. That's how bad this area was. I promised myself I would never buy drugs in person again, not after that experience. A few weeks went by, and I was itching to buy more weed. My friend suggested I try the dark web. He said it was easy to do, and it would ship right to my dorm. A few online tutorials later, I was buying my first gram of weed on the dark web. 1 week later, the drugs came vacuum sealed inside of a box. Quickly, I jumped on my computer and ordered more. Months went by, and I never had any issues. One night, I just couldn't fall asleep. I hopped on my desktop and logged onto the dark web marketplace I used. I began scrolling past different weed strains to the more hardcore drugs. I knew I'd never buy them, but it was interesting seeing all the stuff you could actually buy. I kept scrolling, looking through the endless possibilities. Most people only think you can buy drugs on the dark web, but this marketplace had boats, planes, and cars for pennies on the dollar. All most likely stolen. But nonetheless, it was cool to scroll through. I finally stopped my nightly search, turned off my computer, and prepared for bed. While clearing my bed, I glanced back at my computer. It was still on. I thought to myself, I swore I powered it down. Maybe not. It was a long day. Probably just a brain glitch. As I approached my computer, it showed the same dark web screen as before. Right before closing out of the browser, I noticed something odd. The top of the screen had a banner ad on it. It was a picture of a bowl of cereal. Next to the bowl of cereal was a handgun. The price said $9,999.99. This whole thing struck me as bizarre, almost as an impossibility. There aren't supposed to be any advertisements on the dark web. My curiosity took over me. I couldn't just leave it alone. I had to click on the ad. The page brought me to a generic login screen. It didn't have any title or anything. It just asked for a username and password. Right before giving up, I just typed admin for both the username and password and clicked login. To my shock, it said success, and the page loaded in front of me. When the page fully loaded, I wasn't quite sure what I was seeing. The site had 3 tabs at the top of the screen. The tab on the left said profiles, the one in the middle said current tasks, and the tab on the far right said live auction. Curious, I clicked on the profile tab first. Almost immediately, my screen was filled with people's faces. I clicked on an older gentleman's face. Immediately, a more detailed profile opened. Below his picture was his name, age, current address, habits, difficulty, and reward. His name was Gary. He was 56 years old. Under the habits section, it read, Gary walks his dogs exactly at 9 a.m. in his neighborhood. He walks them later in the day at 3 p.m. and one last time at 9 p.m. before bed. Every Saturday, he goes to the local grocery store at 11 a.m. Under difficulty, it said, easy. Lastly, the reward was listed at $14,000. I closed out of his profile. I didn't know what to think. I wondered what the reward was for. Was this a human trafficking site? It couldn't be, because the profiles were mostly males. I became more intrigued by the second. I clicked on the live auction tab. The page looked like any other chat room. There were usernames on the sidebars. A quick glance at the usernames made me uneasy. Serial Killer 23, Hitman John, Cleanup Crew 2, and Killing Spree, just to name a few. Those were the ones that stood out as odd. Others were relatively normal. A picture began to load in front of me. The picture was of a man who looked to be in his mid-30s. Below his picture were the same details as before on the profile tab. It had his name, age, address, habits, difficulty, and reward. His name was Pete. He was 36. Under habits, it said every day Pete drives to get his morning coffee at 8 a.m. Next to difficulty, it said hard, and that Pete was likely armed as he was a member of the NRA. Right next to his picture, a dollar amount loaded. It said, starting at $40,000. Messages began flooding in. Hitman John messaged, I will end that guy for $30,000. Cleanup Crew 2 chimed in and said, I will do it for $25,000. A user by the name of Raining Death said, I'll do it for $20,000, and I won't leave a mess like Cleanup Crew 2 did last time. Cleanup Crew 2 quickly responded, well, my last contract was an ex-KGB agent, so not the easiest guy to finish off. It hit me like a ton of bricks. This was a site for serial killers and hitmen, or this was the sickest joke of all time. For a while, nobody said a word in the chat. Someone with a username of moderator said, anyone have a better bid? Going once, going twice? The contract is sold to Raining Death. The moderator then typed, since this is a tougher client, I will allow you 2 weeks to finish the deed. Some time passed. The moderator typed in the chat, Moderator 2, I see you're in the room. Please take over and handle the next few auctions. I went on the sidebar and scrolled down. Moderator 2 was highlighted for some reason. I typed the letter F into the chat box out of curiosity. The username Moderator 2 popped up next to the chat box. I realized I was Moderator 2. My heart dropped. What if I closed my computer and just logged out? Maybe they would track me down. How did a serial killer site have such a vulnerability where admin works for the username and password? Someone made a serious mistake if this site was legitimate. I played along. I responded in the chat, sounds good, I will take over. The next profile that automatically loaded in the auction was an older guy with a beard, age 65, gets the morning paper at 10 a.m., difficulty level easy. The starting bid is $15,000. Cleanup Crew 2 quickly typed, I'll do it for $10,000. Nobody else responded. I didn't know what to do. I right-clicked Cleanup Crew 2's username. It had a few options, ban, mute, and assign task. I didn't want to be responsible for killing anyone. I right-clicked my own name and clicked assign. Another option came up for allowed time. I put in 1 year and clicked OK. Messages began flooding the chat room. Raining Death said, a moderator isn't supposed to assign himself to a person. That's not how the system is set up. Cleanup Crew 2 typed, and a 1-year contract? This guy isn't a politician. Something is up with this Moderator 2 guy. I've never seen this happen before. Hitman John replied, definitely an undercover. Quick, get Moderator 3 in the room to fix this now. My stomach dropped, and anxiety flooded my body in anticipation of what was to come. A notification popped up that Moderator 3 joined the room. Serial Killer 23 typed, Moderator 2 is an imposter. Delete him from the site and fry his PC. Moderator 3 said, working on it. Moderator 3 responded, haha, the IP pings to a college. His name is Dylan Reeves. Here is a picture. I didn't know what to do. I felt powerless. My whole body was shaking. Messages began filling the chat. Serial Killer 23 typed, I'll end him for $500. Raining Death replied, I'll do it for only $250. All of a sudden, my computer started glitching out. Black command prompt boxes started filling my screen, and all of a sudden my computer's power surged and everything went black. I tried turning my computer back on, but with no luck. I immediately called 911. They sent 2 special agents to my dorm the next day. I told them everything and gave them my computer. They told me they knew of the site and had been trying to access it for years. Since the incident, I've had several attempts on my life. I had to completely change my identity and move out of the country. Never, never go on the dark web. 3:30 p.m. I log in to get my next assignment. The client is what I expect, a nameless corporate entity that isn't bothering with fancy letterheads and getting straight to the point. The message on my screen is short and precise. Request, 2 ocular implants, fresh, prefer green. Fee, $1,500 are negotiable upon receipt. I'm online for less than 2 minutes, no more and no less. It's easier to not get traced that way. Closing the connection to the dark web, I gather my equipment and move out to start my job. 4:20 p.m. I think I do a pretty good job at selecting donors. Usually I search for people who don't really deserve the good in their lives, the ones that take it for granted. This one is no different. Homeless, wasting their money on booze and drugs. It's doubtful they'll even miss their eyes once I carve them out of their skull. The screams are hard to hear, but I'm strong enough to ignore it and get what I came for. If they are lucky, I kill them. If not, they will go the rest of their life remembering our encounter. 5:30 p.m. I log back in, sending a message to the client. This time it's my turn to try and be succinct. Punctuality and preciseness are appreciated in this sort of business. This much I have learned quickly. Package sent, requesting payment. Further items can be queued for future delivery. I always make sure to include that last little bit as a means to promote myself, although I have never had the same client twice. But to my surprise, the representative is online and requests a chat. This is unusual. It sends some red flags through my mind, but I know not to ignore it. Whatever they have to tell me, it's obviously important. You've proven to be quite a capable agent. Your finesse and attention to detail are exquisite, the message reads. I appreciate the kind words, sir, I respond. No need for those formalities. Call me Derek, he answers. This is highly informal, I realize. The contacts I usually get business from never get personal with me. It's just the nature of the job. I have a proposal to continue your work with us, Aaron, the message reads. My heart starts to race. Everything about this conversation that had seemed unnatural has immediately heightened 10 times. They know me. Of course they know me. They've been monitoring me since day one. Everything I have done in this hell is to erase my past, but with one simple stroke of the keyboard, they have brought it all back. You must be panicking right now, but there is not a need for alarm. You've proven how capable you can be, so I think you'll see very soon how those skills will be useful to you over the next few hours, the message said. What do you want with me? I asked back in the chat. You've been on the run for as long as you can remember, Aaron. What we are offering to you is a chance to go home, Derek responds as an order pops up on screen. It's a few different types of organs, ranging from grown adult brains to spleens from children and appendages that I figured could be used for all sorts of nefarious purposes. But I recognize immediately that these aren't just random requests anymore. The company is targeting the people from my past. I gritted my teeth, knowing that refusal would be a death sentence. I had to get to them before my time ran out. Understood. Mission accepted. I responded to Derek as I logged off and got the tools I would need for the job. Feet, fingers, ears, heart. I would need to be perfect to protect the people I cared about. 7:30 p.m. 3 years ago, I'd have laughed if you told me that people sell organs on the dark web. It sounded like a fairy tale, some silly little fable to scare children away from doing something that they weren't supposed to. Then mid-October, I was in a car wreck and headed for surgery. I would need a new heart to survive. I remember lying there and thinking to myself that I would do anything to save my body. But I simply couldn't afford the expense. It's not like there were any fresh hearts just laying around. Plus, the person that I'd been in a car wreck with was a well-known member of the community. I knew that since they also needed the same surgery, it was likely they would get the treatment instead of me. Then a friend of mine that had been visiting me frequently in the hospital watching my body begin to shut down made the odd conversation about the dark web. I know it sounds crazy, Aaron, but people can actually get what you need from the strangest of places, no questions asked. You simply pay them a fee, and the organs will be here by morning, he told me. I told myself it couldn't be that easy, but the prices offered on the dark web were just within my budget. I was that close to tasting a second chance on life. Of course I would take it. I still remember the first request, hooked up to machines in the hospital, making a deal with devils online. Requesting one new heart. Will make good on payment once recovered. I told myself I was willing to do anything for another chance. When the next day I discovered the organ was there and I was being prepped for surgery, I found out exactly what the price tag was. Your social media profile shows you are a hunter, Aaron. You know the ins and outs of properly cleaning dead bodies, getting the best parts from a deer or wild hog. Humans aren't any different, the job offer told me. Work for us to pay back the remainder of your debt, and you'll never have to worry about anything again, the message said. These memories flooded back to me as I drove across town to my old stomping grounds. I hadn't been able to successfully keep this new life from hurting the people I still cared about. But tonight, I would make sure their safety was ensured. 9 p.m. I've learned a lot in the years I've worked for clients on the dark web, more than I ever cared to admit. Killing has become second nature for me, so as I stand outside the house where I once had a life and see my ex-girlfriend standing there doing dishes, oblivious to the hit that is looking over her head, I can't help but to feel broken inside. It would only take 2 simple shots to the head, and she would never feel a thing. Her organs would be taken off in a matter of seconds. I aimed my weapon with a shaking hand, and then I fired. 11 p.m. Later that night, I'm in the hospital again. A different surgery is about to take place. 2 hands will be removed for the payment to my clients. I ask them to let me use a computer before the operation begins, and I shoot a message to the ones I'm leaving behind. This isn't the life I wanted or cared for, but I have done everything in my power now to protect you. No one will come for you. No one will hurt you. I promise, Aaron. I know that it won't take long for them to get it once I recover from my injuries. By that time, all that will be left to fulfill the client's request is a heart. 2:30 a.m. At some point, I'm awake after surgery, looking down at the stubs of flesh that were once my hands and feet, both destroyed forever so that the people who have forgotten about me don't have to suffer. This feels like a fitting end to my career as an agent of darkness, that the last organs I supply to the dark web are my own. My clients have learned to trust me. They'll never think twice about using them. Clients like Derek that need these organs will offer them like puppy dogs with wet bones to their suppliers. They'll never question where the organs came from. They never do. 4:30 a.m. My surgery is about to start. I'm told that I have a message in my private laptop. I know it's likely another client checking on their order. But no, this one is different than I expected. It's a reply to my farewell. It pains us to see that you have chosen to take your own life rather than that of others. Such a sacrifice feels like a waste. Don't you recognize that as long as the world turns, there will be people like us and people like you? Your sacrifice is meaningless, the email read. Tears swell up in my eyes, but I can't let them know they have won. I have to be strong for everyone. So I ignore their messages and tell the surgeon I'm ready. It's time to say goodbye. If you are reading this now, it should be 7 a.m. after my untimely death. All of my organs have been harvested and supplied to the ones that asked for them. Those new organs will have already been placed in their hosts, dangerous people unaware of the fact that I poisoned my own body and laced it with drugs designed to be untraceable even during an organ transplant. They'll be joining me in hell soon enough. I've arranged for this message to spread across the rest of my client list on the dark web as a warning. It's true, there may one day be people just like me who will do anything to extend their lives, but there will also be people who put others first, regardless of the harm to themselves. My prayer is that my journey into the abyss inspires them.
For those not familiar with the concept, these places are basically kill sites that are designed to allow viewers from across the globe to log into the dark web and see people get tortured, raped, gored, murdered, and God knows what else. Think BDSM, necrophiliacs, hate porn, and times it by about 100 and you get the basic idea. Most of the people who wind up in one of these never come back out. And then there's me, the janitor. I think my job is actually the most important of all. Usually when I go in, the entire place needs a scrub from top to bottom. These perverts don't give a damn what they do, as long as they get their money. And I know what you're thinking. Why haven't I reported this to the police, the FBI, or anyone else? Because I'm sure by now you've got to be asking, how the hell does someone get a job like this? It was early 1999. Craigslist was still a pretty popular thing. I responded to an ad. As simple as that sounds, I was desperate for money and didn't care what the job entailed. I drove to a sketchy strip club just outside of Detroit and talked to a man named Maury. Actually, to be honest, I don't know if that was his name. I was so high to calm my nerves that I can't remember those finer details. And the rules he gave me were simple enough to obey. Maury passed me an old-school Nokia. This phone is now your livelihood. Every Sunday, you'll get coordinates. Wait 13 minutes, and then gather whatever supplies you need before arriving at site. You'll clean up, and then leave. Don't talk to anyone there. Don't ever stay too long or arrive too early. When you are done, you will get a new burner phone for the next job if the client thinks your work is up to par, he said with a sneer. How could I mess that up, right? At the time, I had no clue what I was about to get into, but I soon found out a week later. It isn't every day you walk into a warehouse that has blood on the ceiling and body parts strewn about like loose taffy. I nearly hurled. But somehow I pulled it together and managed to clean the place. I got paid $100,000. That was the price of my silence. Seeing that much money all at once sent me into shock. But it also hooked me to being under their thumb all these years. So you might ask, why after all this time am I coming forward now? As selfish as it sounds, I found out something far worse than even the normal debauchery they were doing. It was a normal job like all the rest, but for some reason I got there early. I figured maybe since this client was offering a bigger payday that punctuality was a big deal. Instead, I walked in on the scene. I froze as I stared at a hooded man holding a gun to the head of the victim. The victim shared the same facial expression as me. His appearance was strikingly similar to mine, like I was staring into my own reflection. Then I watched as the hooded man blew his brains out. "You were told to never arrive early," the client said. "They refused to pay me and pushed me out to the street like I was trash. If you ever tell anyone of what you saw here, you'll be the next one we take," he said. I didn't have the words to describe how overwhelmed I was, but above all else, I needed to be sure I wasn't hallucinating. So I waited until the next cleaner came. I figured if anything, I could check the body for prints to see if maybe it really was an exact replica of me. To my surprise and astonishment, 13 minutes later I saw another version of myself walk into the warehouse to clean. I was there waiting for him when he got out. He looked 10 years younger, but it was clearly no mistake this time. "What the hell?" he asked. "They've used clones all along," I realized. Both of us fled, too scared for words to even comprehend this insanity. I don't know where we are going or whether we are being followed. I just know somewhere out there, there's a room waiting for me. I spend a lot of time on Reddit. I'm sure you do too. I'm on a lot of video game subs, and in particular, ones about text-based games. I'm talking games like Zork. I wasn't alive when Zork came out, but I got really into it in high school. When I made it to college, I took an even deeper dive, playing all the sequels, all the knockoffs, and every shitty game that people had cobbled together and released online. I had to refocus a bit, adding work on top of college courses so I could afford my shoebox apartment. But eventually, I came across a post called Apartment Complex. Not a super promising name, but I was bored, and it was free. And the fact that it was hosted on some weird site that I couldn't access from regular browsers appealed to me. It added an element of mystery. So I opened a Tor browser, entered the link, and got to a profile creation page. Basic stuff, username, preferred resolution, etc. It didn't ask for any personal info, so I kept going. The screen went blank. Then a text box opened up. "Welcome to Apartment Complex. You have been assigned your very own apartment building to run. But this isn't any apartment building, because the tenants are going to be experiencing some pretty scary ordeals. You get to decide what happens next. Will your tenants survive? Will you accidentally butcher them all? The power is in your hands. Are you ready? Y for yes, or N for no." Why not? I figured. I typed in a Y. More text appeared. "Excellent. We'll start you off with an easy management level. You have 6 tenants, numbered 1 through 6. None of them know each other well. Enter a number to learn more about a tenant and begin to make decisions." I grabbed a 6-sided die off my desk and rolled it. 3. 3, I typed. Intriguing choice. The tenant in apartment 3 is Cherie. She's 19 and a sophomore in college. All her friends know her to be outgoing and flirty, and she brings new guys back to her apartment multiple times a week. She doesn't want a commitment. She enjoys sex, but mostly, she just likes not being alone. It's possible it's related to how she was repeatedly abandoned by foster parents. Tonight, she brought home a young man named Thad. She plans to have sex with Thad, and he will pressure her not to use a condom. She will say yes, because she doesn't want to scare him off. But you can help her out. Should tonight be the night she stands up to Thad and tells him she won't sleep with him without protection at the risk of spending the night alone? I didn't realize this game would be so domestic soap opera. Whatever, I thought. Let's see how this plays out. Why? I typed. Intriguing choice. Thad and Cherie start to get hot and heavy. When they are naked on her couch, Thad starts to try penetrating her, but Cherie stops him and says he needs to use a condom. Thad complains that it doesn't feel as good. Cherie tells him that it's more important that both of them are protected from STDs. She's feeling a little tense. Thad calls her a whore and a tease and throws his clothes back on. Cherie cries as Thad goes to storm out. Unfortunately, Cherie's door won't open. Thad checks, and the door isn't locked, but it refuses to open. Furious, Thad storms back to where Cherie is still laying naked on the couch, crying, and begins to scream at her. Would you like to continue making decisions for Cherie, or try another tenant? 1 for Cherie, 2 for new tenant. This game was weird and pretty retro, but I also found myself pretty intrigued by Cherie and Thad's story. The clunky stories in these games had a certain charm that made them very engaging.
Fuck it. Let's keep going. 1, I typed. Intriguing choice. Thad continues to scream at Cherie, who can't stop crying. She's afraid he might hit her. Thad hasn't decided if he will or not, but plans to let his anger and lack of concern for Cherie as a human being guide his behavior. If things continue as they are, Thad will most likely beat Cherie to the point she will need to be rushed to the emergency room. Should Thad be stopped? Y or N? Fuck, I mumbled to myself out loud. This got intense. Y, I typed. Intriguing choice. A ceiling tile falls off. The edge cuts across Thad's jugular. Blood gushes everywhere. He is dead in seconds. What the fuck, I said to myself. This game is whack. The text continued to appear. Cherie is horrified. Much of the blood sprayed all over her. She's so scared, she starts to shut down. Cherie won't be taking any more actions for a while. Choose a tenant. 1, 2, 4, 5, or 6. Damn, I thought. Looks like I'm not going to finish this game with a decent score. Keep plugging away though. I rolled the die again. 5. I typed it in. Intriguing choice. The tenant in apartment 5 is Clyde. He is 35 and works at the local First State Bank. His hobbies include snowboarding, tennis, recreational murder, 90s sitcoms, and fishing. He's home alone tonight after his girlfriend, Alicia, texted him and told him she was leaving him for his brother. He bought a gallon of chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream and is working his way through that and the 3rd season of Frasier. He feels the itch to strangle someone. It's been a while, and he's trying to kick the habit. But the deep well of emotion seems to be so deep that ice cream alone can't fill it. He's hoping to quench the urge with a TV binge, but just as he's settling in, he starts to smell gas. Should he investigate? Y or N? Not investigating would be boring. So of course, I typed in a Y. Intriguing choice. Clyde gets off the couch and follows his nose to the kitchen, where a heavy propane smell is blasting out of one of the burners. He's familiar enough with gas leaks to know that he's one spark away from Clyde Flambe. Should Clyde leave or keep sucking up the fumes? 1, Clyde leaves, or 2, Clyde stays. Seems weird to release the murdered, I thought, but it would be boring to just gas him to death. I type a 1. Intriguing choice. Clyde exits his apartment and heads down the stairs to the front door. When he makes it to the floor below, he sees that the stairs are blocked by fallen ceiling tiles. There are stairs on the opposite side of the floor. On the way, he would pass 2 other apartments, which would likely have phones to call the fire department to handle the gas leak. Should he stop at the first apartment, 1, the second apartment, 2, or take the stairs, 3? 1, I typed. Intriguing choice. That was it. No more text. What the hell? I said under my breath. And then there was a knock on my door. I froze. Hey, anyone home? A voice called from the other side of my door. My name's Clyde. I live on the floor above you. My phone isn't working and my apartment smells like gas. Can I borrow your phone? I sat as still as I could, making no sound. Seriously, it's an emergency. I'm pretty sure I heard some noise in there. I need help. On my screen, I saw more text pop up. Should Clyde keep trying the first apartment, 1, try the next apartment, 2, or take the stairs on the far end of the floor, 3? As gently as I could, I pressed 2. The clack of the key sounded like a gunshot in my head. Whatever, asshole, I know you're home. I hope you enjoy being a piece of shit, Clyde said. Then I heard his footsteps go down the hall. The apartment building I'm in is new and pretty well insulated, but I could faintly hear knocking on the apartment down the hall from me. I knew a college girl lived there. Hopefully she isn't home. Wait, college girl? No, it couldn't be. Text started filling up my screen again. Clyde went to the next apartment and knocked on the door. He heard sobbing from inside. When the tenant inside didn't open the door, he tried the knob. It turned, but the door wouldn't budge. It looked like it was misaligned, and with the heat wave, the wood had swollen and jammed the door in place. Suddenly I heard a smash from outside. I tore my eyes to look at my front door, but it was still solidly shut. The sound had come from down the hall. I looked back at my screen. Clyde used his shoulder to slam the door, and it popped open. He stepped in, calling to whoever was in the apartment. Walking further in, he saw a shocking sight. A man on the ground, his neck slashed open. A ceiling tile on the ground next to him. On the couch, a completely naked young woman. And, covering everything, a massive splatter of blood. Clyde grinned. Are you going to help Cherie by leaving your apartment and going to hers, or do nothing while Clyde murders her? This was so messed up. I couldn't just let someone murder my neighbor, even if I barely knew her. But I was terrified. I got up, ran to my kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I could find, then went to my door. I took 3 deep breaths to steady myself. Then I unlocked the door, threw it open, and ran out into the hall. I looked over to where the other apartment was, and I could see where the door had been broken in. I ran as quietly as I could over there, and when I reached the door, stopped short and stuck my head around the door frame to see what was going on. Unfortunately, I couldn't see what was happening from where I was. I crept in as stealthily as I could. The first thing that hit me was the bitter stench of blood. Then I got close enough to see what was happening. Cherie was on her back on the couch, Clyde leaning over her with his hands around her throat. She was scratching at him, but the blood made everything slick, and it looked like her nails were sliding around more than doing damage. I ran up to them and drove my knife straight into Clyde's back. He roared and whirled around. "You bastard!" he yelled, and dove at me, tackling me to the ground. He started pummeling me with his fists. There was little I could do to stop him. With each blow, I felt myself getting weaker, my vision going darker. And then Clyde screamed. I focused as best I could. Above Clyde, Cherie was raising the knife for another blow. She stabbed Clyde over and over until he collapsed on top of me. And then she stabbed him some more. I screamed at her to stop, to let me up, and eventually I broke through her terror. She helped me push his body off. I threw a blanket around Cherie and then called the cops. We spent a lot of time going over our stories with them. I left out the dark web stuff because I didn't want to get in trouble. Finally, the cops left. Cherie went to stay with her parents, and I went back to my apartment. When I got back, words were flashing on my screen. Remember, everything that happened tonight was your choice. And below that, we hope you play Apartment Complex again. I sat down on my computer and opened the Tor browser. I'd been recently reading about using the dark web. I didn't want to do any of that crazy stuff, nothing weird. No dead bodies or torture or weird porn or anything. I was just curious. For me, the dark web was like driving past a car crash. You don't want to see what happened, all the gory details and possible bodies. But at the same time, you have to look. You have to see. You have to know and witness, and you want to see the viscera. You need it, and you hate that you need it. I was able to find some basic dark websites. I kept messing them up, typing .com instead of .onion, but I was slowly making progress. One site would lead me to another, and I wound up on a site that paired you with anonymous chat partners. I was operating under the username StevieBoy69. Yes, whine about it, but the 69 made it funny. I entered a chat room and found myself talking with someone called Gatekeeper of Secrets, probably some emo kid who thought they were so cool. "Hey, how's it going?" I typed. "Don't waste my time," Gatekeeper of Secrets typed back. "You're acting like you've never been here before." "Well, I am new to this," I replied. "Fuck, a newbie, I'm leaving." "Wait, please," I typed back in a panic. "You here to goof around, or do you mean business? I'm not here to get the runaround, moron," he said. I doubted that I actually wanted to get involved, but this guy was challenging me. I couldn't just wimp out. "I mean business." "Fine," he typed. "What you got?" he asked. "Huh?" I responded. "What are you selling, Nimrod?" "I'm not selling anything," I typed back. "Then what are you buying?" he asked. "What you got?" "I got access to the realm of secrets. I can give you the address and the passcode, but you have to give me something in return." "Like what?" I asked. "I need a secret," he typed back. "I hate cream cheese," I typed. "That's not going to suffice. I'm out." "Wait, shit," I typed. "What kind of secret?" I asked. "Something that means something," he typed. "Like what?" "Like have you killed anybody?" he asked. Shit just got real. I could feel the nervousness in my gut. But it's the dark web. He can't trace me. I'm safe. That's the whole point. "No, of course not," I typed. "Weak," he typed back. "What are you, 12? Looking for something strange, and you wound up here?" "I'm 22, I typed back. "I'm actually 20, but 22 sounded more mature." "No one cares," he typed. "You have any secrets that mean a damn, or are you some straight-edge little boy who ain't done shit?" "I watched my neighbor undress through her window," I typed. "Well now, maybe you ain't a total waste. Tell me about it," he said. "I was still in high school. My neighbor was my mom's best friend," I typed. "Oh good. The little kid is into granny porn," Gatekeeper typed back. "Screw off," I typed, then gasped, because I probably shouldn't be talking shit to people on the dark web, but I lucked out. "Haha," he typed back. "Looks like you might have a little life in you yet." Anyways, she was a total cougar, and she left her blinds pulled back in her bedroom one time. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe it wasn't. She was changing into workout clothes. She took off everything. I was in my room, and I ducked down so I could look through my window without being super obvious. It was unreal. Quite the story, he typed back. All right, Stevie Boy 69, I'm feeling generous. Go to g534990.onion, and when prompted, type in 933NNE. That'll get you to the business chat. When you start talking, someone will ask you a question. You need to answer them by saying exactly this: I have secrets to buy. Then you're in. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it, I typed. That link will only get you to the password prompt for the next 5 minutes, so use it or lose it. Gatekeeper of Secrets left the chat. What the hell? I mumbled to myself. This was some crazy shit. It was scary, but at the same time, it was so thrilling. I really enjoyed sharing that story. I hadn't been able to tell anyone else before. I could feel myself getting turned on just thinking about it, and it was anonymous, right? So I could say or be whatever I wanted. I only hesitated for a second before I typed in the address I'd been given. It took me to a super bland password entry page, and I entered the password Gatekeeper of Secrets had given me. I was redirected to another chat room. A message told me that I was connected with Guardian of Secrets. Why are you here? The Guardian typed. I have secrets to buy, I said, copying what I needed to say from my conversation with Gatekeeper. Welcome. Be respectful. Step out of line, and you will pay the consequences, he typed. Guardian disconnected from the chat. My screen flashed, and I found myself in another chat room. I was connected with someone called Secrets. What is it you seek, Steve Miller? Secrets typed. How did he know who I was? This was supposed to be private, secure, untraceable. That was the whole point of the Tor browser. I'm screwed, I thought to myself. I know many things, Secrets typed. That is the role of a broker of knowledge. Now, what do you desire to know? What do you have to offer? I asked, stalling. How about your best friend's darkest secret? Secrets asked. Joey? What would Joey keep from me, I thought. He wouldn't keep secrets from me, I typed. Oh, but he does. And I have proof. You'll want to know, I promise, Secrets typed. What does it cost me? Nothing you can't pay. Is it agreed? I need to know the cost first, I typed. I'm not that stupid after all. Nothing you can't pay, Secrets typed again. Either we have an agreement or I leave. I couldn't help it. Knowing there was a secret that Joey was keeping from me was driving me insane. Not knowing would eat at me. Fine, just don't steal my organs or some shit, I typed. Agreed, Secrets said. There was a pause. Is he going to tell me this secret or not? I grumbled. I reached towards the keyboard to send a message when I saw Secrets was typing again. 3 weeks ago, Joey came by your house to talk to you. You were not there. You were at work trying to save up enough money for your own place. Your parents were also gone. Your older sister was home, though. She invited him in and offered him a drink. They got to talking, and one thing led to another. Joey had sex with your sister. It was her suggestion. It was his idea that they do it in your bed. No way, I gasped. You've never had sex in this bedroom for fear of being caught by your parents. So who do you think the condom wrapper under your bed belongs to? I shoved away from my computer, almost tipping my chair over. I laid down on the floor next to my bed, pulled out my cell phone and turned on the flashlight. I saw a condom wrapper, and then another, and another. There were at least 5 of them, all ripped open. I could feel my body shaking. Fuck, I said, too shocked for anything more intelligent. Slowly, I got back to my feet and sat down at my computer. How the hell did you know? And why are there so many condoms down there? I asked Secrets. To the first question, I cannot reveal my ways. To the second, they had a lot of fun, so there were repeats. Most recently, yesterday. Last night, you slept in the same sheets that your sister and best friend were in when they copulated. Shit, I said, startled and disgusted in equal measure. I was home alone, so I couldn't confront my sister. She was at the movies with her friends, and I wasn't sure if she'd be back tonight at all. Now, Secrets typed, the payment. I felt shivers throughout my body. I was so tweaked out, I had forgotten about the rest of this bargain. I want another secret, or else I'll tell your mom's friend's husband that you were touching yourself while you watched his wife undress. This guy was not playing around. He would destroy me. All right, sure. I don't know what other secrets I have. I'm super boring. Think fast. You have 2 minutes to come up with a second secret, or else I share your first one. I have no time for boring people, Secrets typed. What was I going to do? What have I done? What do I know? I'm just a regular college dude. Can the secret be something I know about someone else? I typed rapidly. Any secret that is powerful enough will do, Secrets replied. Stop the clock. I've got one for you, I typed. I am ready to hear it, he said. I know this guy, Doug. We have classes together. Used to hang out, but he's a tool, so we don't anymore. I don't know why this is the case, but the guy always seems to have absolute rockets for girlfriends, and Mel was no exception. She was so hot. Anyways, turns out Mel was having some fun on the side with a girl named Mallory. She was super sneaky about it. The only reason Doug found out is because he had installed a hidden camera in Mel's bathroom so he could creep on her, and he saw them getting it on in the shower together. So Doug made copies of the tape and sold it all over campus, posted it online behind a paywall, made a few $100. Mel and Mallory were fucking traumatized, obviously, and they both ended up dropping out of school. I haven't heard from them since. No one else knew how the video was made, and when Mel tried to say something about it, the school called her a disgrace and refused to listen. I heard she moved to another state. Interesting, Secrets replied. I accept this as payment. Would you like a second secret? I am willing to provide up to 3, so long as the payment is acceptable in return. I was in way too deep. I should stop. This shit was serious. But I thought of another secret I could tell, about my sister and the white powder I had seen peeking out of her makeup bag. And if I had payment at the ready, then this shouldn't be a problem. What you got? I asked Secrets. You know Sasha, the girl you stare at Intro to Chem? Yeah, I typed. She took these, but never sent them out. Below the last chat bubble, a zip folder appeared. Download it, Secrets said. Once the secret is started, it must be completed. Otherwise, there will be consequences. Death by an angry husband, he didn't need to add. I downloaded the folder and extracted the files. It was a dozen image files. I clicked on the first one to open it. It was Sasha, smiling at the camera, wearing a low-cut yellow dress. Attractive, but definitely not as scandalous as I had feared, hoped. I went to the second. Sasha was removing the dress. In the third, no more dress. By the 6th picture, she was completely naked, and by the 12th, I had seen all of her, inside and out. She was stunning, and I had my own little file of photos of her for the next time I was feeling lonely and too afraid to text her. I saw a new message pop up behind the photos, and I switched back to the chat. Payment for these photos will be photos of your own. Take photos of yourself without clothes in the same positions as Sasha. You need to use props the same way as her as well. Your sister should have toys you can borrow. Whoa now, I typed. That's way too far. I have a secret that I can pay with instead. Take the photos or face the consequences, Secrets responded. Wait, look, it's a really good secret, I typed. Last chance, Secrets typed. You'll enjoy it, I imagine. The secret's about drugs and everything, I typed. Prepare for a visitor, Secrets said. Then my screen went black and the computer turned itself off. I heard my neighbor's door slam and heavy footsteps run through our yard. Open the fucking door, Stevie. I know you're home, and I'm going to rip your face off. I heard my mom's friend's husband yell as he yanked open the front door. It was another tireless night at work. As it often did, time had managed to sneak away from me as I dutifully read through countless stacks of papers, each more boring than the last. As I realized the clock was about to hit 11 in the evening, I started to dread the trek home, knowing I'd get an earful from my loving wife. She'd been complaining a lot about my hours, which in a way made sense, seeing as they practically doubled as we moved. She just lost her job during the pandemic, and while she definitely understood, she was all alone. And it definitely didn't help that she was also a bit paranoid in nature, living in a large but old house, one that creaked with each step and screamed as the wind howled through the unfurnished halls. It was kind of eerie, but we'd just moved. We needed time to make it feel like a proper home. Once I'd finished the last page, I threw the documents crudely into a folder and hurried to pack my things. As I did, I heard a ping emerge from my computer. I worried it might be more work, and considered whether or not I should just pretend I didn't hear it. After all, it was after hours, and whatever it was could wait until morning. But I had to know what it was. So I opened my inbox, relieved to find a non-work related message. Hey Gary, how are you doing? It read. It was my wife. She was the only person in the world who ironically called me that after accidentally getting my name wrong on the first date. It had become sort of an inside joke, but the email it came from was somehow blocked. "Hey, hun, I swear I'm on my way home. Time just got away from me," I typed in, hoping she wasn't too mad that I had missed dinner for the nth time. "No problem, but maybe I can tempt you a bit. Do you have time for a chat?" Her suggestion sounded mildly provocative, but knowing our work emails were under constant supervision, I was hesitant. "Come on, you know they'll see this," I argued. "I know, so come talk to me here." She sent back with a blinking smiley. She wasn't talking about our home, but rather a link she'd shared with me in the same message. Suspicious but curious, I opened it. With that, I was brought to a strange, dark-looking website on a browser I couldn't recognize. While I'd never been a computer aficionado, I like to think I knew my work computer pretty well, but that was something new entirely. It was called a Tor browser, and the website was all too basic. "I see you found me." "Seems like I did. So what's with all the mystery?" I asked, intrigued and mildly nervous. "I want you to think, Gary. What's your favorite memory?" she asked. "What do you mean?" "Of us, tell me." I thought long and hard, hoping not only to find something I enjoyed, but something she'd agree with. It had to be a moment that meant something deeper, so I decided to tell her about the moment I knew for sure that I loved her. We'd been dating 6 months. I was taking you out for a picnic in the infinite fields around my childhood home. There was this forest, so dense and hardly ever traversed by anyone, except for those who'd grown up there. I'd found an opening in the dense vegetation, a place so dark at night that the entire galaxy stared down at us. I didn't tell you where we were going, nor why I'd chosen exactly that spot. We ate, we drank wine, we made love as the sun set in the distance, and then we fell asleep under the open sky without even bothering to set up a tent. Of course, I'd read the forecast. It was supposed to stay warm, but then a storm came out of nowhere, waking us up as thunder shook through the clouds. We screamed and struggled to get the tent up in a rush, and I half expected you to be angry, but instead, you just laughed. Even when my entire plan had been shattered, and we were soaking wet from ice-cold water, you still had a good time. That's when I knew that I loved you. The wall of text sat on the screen for a couple of minutes as I eagerly awaited a response. In that moment, I felt so incredibly smooth, as if I'd chosen the perfect memory. "That's beautiful, Gary." It was odd that she still referred to me as Gary. She'd usually just greet me like that, but overusing the joke kind of took the fun away from it. "I want you to visualize that moment. Think about it as if you were still there in that opening. I'm sending you a little gift," she said. "A gift? Like here at work?" "Yes. Why not let me just come home and get it?" I asked. "Come on, it wouldn't be as fun," she argued. The mystery was coming close to unbearable, yet I had to admit that I quite enjoyed her efforts to spark some passion into our otherwise boring routine. It made me feel young again, as we'd just met so desperate to impress each other. "So what do I do in the meantime?" I asked. "Just wait, imagine, and enjoy the memories. Shouldn't take more than 20 minutes. I'll send you a message as soon as it gets there." 15 minutes was a bit much considering I only lived 10 minutes away from work by car. I could have easily gotten there in that time, but I figured she needed some time to prepare, so I sat back and started to reminisce about our youth. We'd been so passionate back then, inseparable since the day I accidentally bumped into her at a restaurant, causing half a bottle of wine to spill onto her. As clumsy as I was, she took me up on my offer to buy her a drink, which she jokingly threw at my shirt to get even. Then the two of us sat there covered in wine as we shared our first few words. I needed to bring that magic back into our relationship, and when she'd taken the first step, I'd be damned if I didn't keep fanning the flames. I would be better. I promised myself that much. Spend less time at work, focus more on our relationship. There I sat, trying to plan how I could be a better husband, coming up with romantic ideas as the clock ticked down. Then I finally got another message. "It's lying on the doorstep. Why don't you go have a look?" she suggested. "Oh, and message me back when you see it." I rushed to the door, where I found a neatly wrapped present lying just outside. I picked it up, realizing just how light it felt compared to its size. I brought it back to my computer, where another message had popped up. "Have fun," it read. With those words, I ripped the paper apart and opened the box. The sight of what I found inside caused me to immediately drop it onto the ground, allowing a single, severed finger to roll out onto the floor. The finger wore red nail polish and a wedding ring. It belonged to my wife. I immediately turned my attention towards the screen to see if it was some kind of sick prank, but the chat box had vanished. Without hesitation, I called the police, who arrived at the house just a moment before myself. As I tried to rush inside, an officer stopped me. The door was clearly broken, and there were uniformed men carrying out a covered-up gurney. My wife was lying on it, dead and mutilated beyond recognition. They never let me near the body. They just showed me some covered-up pictures for identification. One of them is just a photo of her unique shoulder tattoo. "What happened to my wife?" I asked in shock as they questioned me. "Someone broke into your house. From reports, we assume it happened around 9 o'clock, the officer said. 9 o'clock? I was supposed to be home by then, but I'd been working overtime as I so frequently did. But I spoke to her later than that, I argued, still not believing the words he spoke. It wasn't her. Someone wanted to keep you busy, pretending to be her. You sure you didn't realize something was wrong? No, I don't... The words froze in my throat. Had I just ignored the strange, fake messages and gone home when I planned to, she might have still been alive. My wife died that day, just before midnight. If not for the overtime and the chat, I could have saved her, but I didn't. And I can't ever forgive myself for that.
My name is Ben, and my friend killed himself. The worst part is that I am responsible for his death. I can still see myself walking up to our apartment door, twirling my keys without a care in the world, not knowing the nightmare I was about to walk in on. The whole scene plays out in my mind now, over and over. I walk in, and I see him there dangling from the ceiling fan by a rope. It seems impossible that the rope doesn't break from the fan, and even more freaky to look into my friend's dead eyes as he is hanging there. The chair he was standing on is toppled over, and behind him, I can see his webcam with a blinking red light. He recorded the entire thing. I stumble over to where he is at and try to help him down. His dead weight falls from the fan and tumbles onto the floor. His skull makes a sickening sound as it bangs off the floor. I feel transfixed looking at his rigid corpse, trying to understand why my best friend would be so selfish and cruel to end his own life. Then a soft beat pulls me back to reality. The webcam is making a soft noise, a reminder that it was still filming. Did I want to actually see a suicide? Was there something in that footage that would explain why he had done this? A soft ping shook my memory away, and I looked at the computer screen. I walked closer and noticed there was a notification on the screen. It was a notification to join a chat room. Curiosity got the best of me, and I clicked on it. A chat screen opened. It wasn't like a usual chat screen. It was a black box, almost like a command prompt box. At the top of the box, there was a section that said Users. Under Users, there were 2 people listed in the chat room. I was one of them. My name was Ben. The username of the other guy was obviously a fake one. It read Anonymous53. Whoever this was, he definitely didn't want to make himself known. I typed in the chat, "Hello? Who is this?" "Who I am isn't important. What matters is who you are and what you have done," the man responded. I knew he was trying to frighten me. I didn't have anything to hide. "Is this about Marcus?" I asked. I knew it had to be, but I wanted to confirm. "It's about crimes and punishments," the guy said. "What do you mean by crimes and punishments?" I asked. "You killed Marcus. That is first-degree murder, and the punishment is life in prison or death," he typed back. "You are insane. I didn't kill him. He killed himself," I typed back in a fury. He replied, "You indeed killed Marcus." "How can you make such an accusation? What proof would you even have?" I typed back. He attached an image. It was a text conversation between Marcus and I. The blood from my face drained. It was a conversation I regretted ever having. It read, "Hey Ben, do you think I could join you at the party this Saturday night?" I replied, "No man, I don't think that would be a good idea." "And why would that be?" Marcus asked. "Well, you just sit in your room all day and play video games. And you are a bit awkward around the ladies, Marcus. If anything weird happens, I will be the one to blame for inviting you," I said back. "Man, that is harsh, Ben. You really think that of me? We have been friends all these years. We used to play Halo together. Remember that, Ben? We used to grind late at night on new accounts to get them to level 50
And then we would sell them, he replied. Yes, Marcus. Of course I remember those days. But I grew out of the video game phase, and you're still deep in it. You're still my good friend, Marcus. You just have to understand that I have a life now, and you are still socially awkward, I said in the conversation. What do you mean socially awkward, Ben? Marcus asked. Come on, Marcus. I really don't want to go through this with you. No, lay it straight on me, Ben. Tell me how you really feel, he said. Last time I invited you out, one of the guys told the hottest girl there to talk to you. All she did was say, hey, and you just stood there frozen. No words came out of your mouth. Everyone just started laughing, and you bolted from the party. I mean, you're my good friend and all, but that situation ruined my reputation and credibility. It took forever to get it back, and I just don't want to have any future incidents, I said. That hits hard, man. I see how it is. You picked the cool crowd over me. Have fun being a fake douche and trying to fit in with them. That was the last thing Marcus said to me. I was speechless. How did this random guy have access to my text messages? The screen transitioned back to my conversation with Anonymous 53. I typed back, how the hell do you even access my messages? My team and I have our ways, he replied. What do you mean you guys have your ways? I asked. We control the dark part of the internet, the side of the internet that no one really knows about. When you see a picture of an iceberg, only 10% of it is actually above the surface, and the other 90% is below the water. The internet is only 10% of what you see. We observe and control the other 90%. The access we have to information would make your head spin. We do our best to fix things that are wrong in society. Think of us as your modern-day Robin Hood, he said. What do you want from me? I asked. I want the same thing that happened to Marcus to happen to you. My stomach dropped to the floor. My hand started to shake. Why would you want that? I asked. Well, you killed Marcus, he typed. I did not kill Marcus. He killed himself. Yes, I do regret having that conversation with him. I am really sorry I was a jerk to him. But I did not help him on the chair, and I never tied a string around his neck. I certainly didn't help him jump off the chair to his death. He didn't reply right away like he usually did. Now I was getting angry. My hands were shaking in rage. I knew I needed to stop talking to this jerk and call the police immediately to report Marcus's body. Something in me just couldn't stop talking to this guy. He finally responded. Ben, you indeed killed Marcus. Your actions sent him over the edge. You are the one to blame. Screw you. I did not kill Marcus. You are just a lowly hacker. You do not intimidate me. I am not a lowly hacker, Ben. I am anonymous. We do not forgive, and we do not forget. You will do as I say, or your life will be much harder, he replied. And what do you want me to do? I asked. I already told you. You need to kill yourself, just as Marcus did, he replied. You're a joke. I am not doing that, I typed back. I figured you'd say that. Why don't you go ahead and take a look at the video footage? I think that will change your mind. All of a sudden, a video loaded on the screen. It was Marcus from earlier that day. He didn't look well. He stared aimlessly at the wall with a blank expression across his face. He started to pace back and forth across the room. All of a sudden, he went out of the screen into another room and returned with a chair. He placed the chair underneath the fan. He left the screen for a few seconds and returned with some rope. He began tying the rope around the fan into a loop. My jaw dropped to the floor. I suddenly came into the video. I was wearing the same clothes I have on right now. Everything looked so real. How is this possible, I thought to myself. As Marcus stood up on the chair, I was right behind him. My hands were positioned behind Marcus to make it look like I was helping him onto the chair. As Marcus leaned into the noose, my hand guided him from behind. My stomach dropped. Anonymous 53 had deep-faked me into the video to make it look like I helped Marcus commit suicide. I felt like passing out. This was all too much for me to handle. A real voice sounded from my computer.
What are you going to do, Ben? You better act quick.
The cops are already on their way. We already sent them the video. In the distance, I started to hear sirens. The sirens got louder and louder. I looked outside my window. To my horror, police cars lined the street. I knew what I had to do. There was no getting out of this. I stepped over Marcus's body and got on the chair. I took one deep breath and jumped into the rope. Everything went black. My name's Eric, and I am a beginner game designer. What that means is I understand the basics of stuff like Unreal Engine and other tech, but I don't have the funds to put my skills to the test, at least not fully. I tried different fundraising platforms like Patreon, GoFundMe, and Kickstarter. None of those panned out. I know my ideas are great, I just need money to get them off the ground. If I can just gather some funds, I will be off to the races. That's what got me on the dark web. A friend of mine told me I could raise money pretty easily there. According to him, anything and everything can be bought. But the question becomes, what are you willing to pay? I didn't quite follow what he was saying at first. Weren't the backers the ones giving me the funds? It doesn't always work that way on the dark web. You know how on Kickstarter you have to make certain promises to the pledges? I told him I would think it over. I had college and other general life duties to take care of, and really didn't know when I would even get started on this pipe dream. But less than a week later, I saw another indie developer jumping out to make a game similar to mine, and I knew I couldn't just wait for a miracle. It was time to make deals with devils. I got the right equipment to access the dark web and started searching the forums. I put out a dozen offers on different sites, offering my services for any sort of financial backing. Maybe I was a little drunk and not thinking straight, but I felt that I would be willing to give up anything just to make this project happen. A day or so later, I wasn't getting any hits. No one was taking an interest. It made me feel like a failure. If I couldn't even get seedy underworld thugs to talk to me about my games, what chance did I stand in the real market? But I decided to try just one more site, a place called shadowsale.onion, and wrote this. I know a lot of people come here asking for money and saying they will do anything for it, but I mean it. This means the world to me. I can't let it go. I will pay any price. Please, just someone help me. 20 minutes later, I got a response. Username Mr. Death. They typed out this message. Your offer intrigued me. This project must be something life-changing. Contact me on this private server ASAP. I couldn't believe my luck. I went immediately. The backer had a lot of questions for me. What sort of game was it? How would it work? Who would benefit? I did my best to answer them all. He was very interested. I could tell that this backer really thought I had a unique vision. There is a lot to unpack to this, Eric. Give me a little time to think it over, he said. Then he went dark. I waited all night, hoping and praying that this would be the answer I needed. Around 3:30 early that morning, a ping from my phone told me that they had sent over funds. It was 6 times how much I had even asked for. I was stunned. Then they sent a message along with it. Get started with the prototype. We will discuss the extra steps tomorrow. I didn't even get any sleep. Immediately, I started buying software, attending online classes to learn the right programs. This was exactly what I needed and more. But in the back of my mind, I wondered what they meant by extra steps. Were they planning to do something with my game once it was finished? I tried to push it aside and keep working. I wanted to prove their investment wasn't a mistake. The next day, sleep deprived, I sent a message and showed them what was done so far. I'm impressed. You're a man of your word. Now tell me exactly what would be needed to create a user interface for this program, he asked. Are you talking like virtual reality? To be honest, I haven't considered it, I said. The application of this game could be next level tech, Eric. I suggest you start considering it, because companies like Oculus would be chomping at the bit to get near this, Mr. Death said. He wired me more money, insisting I get started right away. I can't. I have to get to work tomorrow, I said in the chat. Forget your job. The money I'm offering can sustain you. This project is all that matters now, they told me. Then they added a message that should have been another red flag to me. I will be sending some codes and specifics for the program tonight. Implement them immediately. I wasn't aware they were a programmer, so it struck me as odd. What did they want to add to my code? Was this a hack? Then I looked at the money again. I had come too far to stop now. I started adding all of the lines of code, making the algorithm exactly what he wanted it to be. It felt like a part of me was being sold just to get this done, but it was a price I was willing to pay. Fame couldn't possibly be far behind. Mr. Death stopped contacting me, despite all of my attempts to reach him. He had simply vanished. I was sure that it was something I had done, failing to properly understand the different programs he wanted me to add to the game. But I soon found out that wasn't the case at all. It was about a month later. I was at a local indie conference, a game expo that showcased new projects coming out soon. The exact prototype of my game was on display, being sold by some shifty vendor. My blood boiled. I couldn't believe I had been tricked so easily. I ran up to the presenter and demanded an explanation, but they just looked at me like I was crazy. "This has been in development for a while, bud, so I suggest you just keep stepping, unless you need me to call security," they said. It occurred to me I had literally no proof that the game was mine. When I had sent all the files to Mr. Death, I foolishly hadn't considered making backups. And now, as a result, my work was being claimed by someone else. Part of me was furious, but another part of me was proud. This was the result of my work, even if nobody recognized it. I could finally say that I had finished something. A sliver of a smile traced my lips as the first person came to try the game out and put on the Oculus headset. I waited patiently on the side to see what would happen. Less than 5 minutes later, the person started to scream and cry and tried to take off the headset in a panic. The smile on my face turned to worry. What was happening? I thought to myself. The presenter helped them get the apparatus off and looked at their bloodshot eyes. "This thing is a living nightmare. How the hell did it do that?" the customer asked as they left the booth. I approached the rep in concern and remarked, "What exactly does the VR show them?" "It monitors their brainwaves and presents their darkest fears to the light. Some people can't handle it. It's a bit of advanced AI, but we do have a consumer warning," he commented. He sounded nervous, like some of what the game was doing was unanticipated. I decided to give it a brief try, putting on the headset. What I saw still haunts me to this day. Somehow the game was able to bring up traumatic memories from my childhood and bring them to life. It felt like the game was intruding on my thoughts. This isn't what I wanted at all. I wanted immersive, but this is insane. I realized as I took off the headset quickly. I saw other customers avoiding the booth now as they recognized the threat. They had turned my game into a death machine, causing pain and agony to anyone who played. I left the expo soon after and composed this warning to all out there on the dark web and mainstream media. I don't know what my game is going to do next, but I urge you that you must never play it. It's learning and adapting, and I don't think it likes to lose. I work in cybersecurity. The web is a dangerous place nowadays, and people need to protect themselves. Not just from hackers and viruses, though. There's actually a lot more dangerous threats out there in the darkest corners of the internet that can't be found using regular tech. Terrorist organizations, organ auctions, torture porn of the worst kind. It's my job to shut these down. My most recent assignment revolves around a rumor of camera feeds that were blackmailing people to send money to anonymous shell companies. It sounded like the advanced version of a Nigerian scam. Send enough money, and the unseen enemy gives you the hope they will go away. And most people don't realize that just by taking the bait, they are caught in the trap. I started my search in the typical chat rooms, immersing myself with the people that came here on an ordinary basis. It still surprises me that there are so many people in the world that actually want to go to these sites, that they derive some sort of sick pleasure from the twisted and perverted things that they find in the shadowy pits of the dark web. One such user, named Shadow113, invited me to a private group that focused on found footage after my initial post seemed to be ignored for 19 hours. I figured it was going to be a dead end. Most of this work involves boring searching. Oftentimes, I wind up shutting down smaller servers in my quest to find the big stuff. So you're trying to find some of the off-market footage? What kind are you interested in? Snuff films? Torture vids? The user asked once we were in the private chat. A quick check of my scanning hardware told me that it was no beginner. He was making sure his ISP wasn't on the radar, constantly making sure that it was bouncing back and forth by different signals. No, more like feeds that people use for blackmail, that kind of thing, I told the user. Roger that. Do you have payment? This was another standard part of the dark web. Pay before getting services. Thankfully, my job gives me the untraceable bitcoins I need at a moment's notice, so I wired them to his requested dummy account and then waited. A moment later, I was given a link to a website that made me pause. It was titled PeopleCam. For some reason, that name made me uneasy, but I clicked it anyway. A dozen different video feeds pulled up, showing a variety of different angles and point of views. It was jarring. As I took a moment to view one of the shots, I realized they all seemed to be from the vantage point of someone holding a camera from over their head. It was designed to capture that first-person view. This angle was becoming more popular around the dark web. Then I saw a man standing in the mirror. I had to blink twice to make sure I wasn't seeing things. The way the video feed was pointed, the camera should have been right where his eyes were looking. but there was no recording device anywhere in sight. I tried to wrap my mind around how they could be getting any of this feed when a message from Shadow113 popped up again. So which user are you interested in shutting down? My mouth suddenly felt dry as I realized what he was implying. I couldn't help but to type out the question, hoping his response was not what I was thinking. Are all of these feeds coming from? Before I could even finish the question, the user knew what was frightening me. Inside people's heads? Yep, that's the beauty of PeopleCam. Our brains are no different than any other kind of tech. A few codes and hacks and you can get in. You can do whatever you want to whoever you want. There was a sickening twist in my stomach as I realized the extent of this. This could affect every person in the world, I typed. Oh, it does, man. We can access anyone's life directly from a computer, and they aren't even aware. It's a new age for cybercrime, the user said enthusiastically. What happens when you shut someone down? I asked. He showed me by example. One of the screens went black, and I heard this bizarre clicking and snarling noise as the feed was filled with static, and then abruptly announced that the feed was offline. They were dead. The sounds of their agonizing screams were enough to convince me of that. So, what exactly are you looking for, mate? The black marketer asked, as he seemed impatient for me to decide. I was so taken back by this discovery, I was too paralyzed to even move. Then I had a realization and typed in my own name. I had to see for myself if this was 100% real. A feed displayed, showing me staring in front of my own computer screen. My heart dropped. I could see the hollow look in my eyes and felt a shudder go up and down my spine. So this is the guy? Shadow113 asked. His question barely registered as I tried to wipe away a cold sweat. I shut down my connection immediately, too stunned to even think of how to respond. My manager asked me for a report on the project. I couldn't bring myself to admit I didn't even understand the full extent of this dark site. But one thing I knew for sure, I couldn't let myself be shut down, or else mankind would be at risk. Mission complete, I lied to him. And then I quickly shut down all connections to PeopleCam. I just hope no one else finds it. I need to find her. Where is she? Damn it, where is she? I loved her. But did I? Yes, I loved her. But why am I doing this? Because I want to. Because I need to. One link was provided. All I need to do is type it in. Damn it, I can't do it. She is making me do this. I was happy all by myself until I met her. She loved me and I loved her. But my desire, my itch to do these things, it's not my fault. Is it too late to back out now? I already put the deposit down. There's no going back. That's what they said. I wanted this. I thirst for this. Just one more. One more time and I will be done. I will go back to living a normal life. But what will I tell my kids? Her kids? No. Stop with that thinking. I must do this. This will be the last time, I promise. The website is already pasted in my Tor browser. I hovered my finger over the Enter key, hesitating, contemplating. I don't have to do this. I can just power down my computer and this will be the end of it. But they will kill her anyways. Better me than them. Damn it, what now? The chat. The stupid chat. What is the matter, Kyle? You are a valued customer of ours, but you know the rules. Even for you, we can't make any exceptions. Time is running out, and I cannot extend it. We have a few more options available this time that are sure to excite you. Please click on your unique link and we can get started. Options. I like options. I wonder what kind of options he is talking about. The past few kills have been rather boring, driving me away from the website. What's the point of killing when you can't be creative about it? I typed back. What options are you talking about? Click the website and we will get started. We can't disclose that information until you are in the secure server. The wonder, the anticipation, the adrenaline. It was all too much for me to handle. I needed to find out what these options were. Maybe my horizon will be broadened, possibilities expanded. With a click of a button, I was committed. Like a rocket ship firing on all boosters, there was no going back now. I would live out my fantasy. Whatever consequences that may come of this, I will deal with later. The feeling is overtaking my body. You can still stop it, Kyle. What are your kids going to think? One day someone is going to find out. No, they won't find out. I'm careful. I cover my tracks. I need to do this. I crave to do this. The website looks quite different than before. Updates? Changes maybe? This is all exciting stuff. Options. That's right. Maybe this all has to do with more options. I can't wait. The excitement is overwhelming. Where is the video player? No video player? That is like an artist that doesn't have their canvas to paint on, a virtuoso without their piano. I type in the chat. What the hell? Where's the live stream of her? Where is my beautiful, gorgeous wife? I regret to inform you, Kyle, that we had to do away with video. I can only provide pictures. What? No video? No deal. I want my money back. I want my wife back. Kyle, it was in the contract. You want those options, don't you? It would really be unfortunate for you to miss out on those options. Options. Yes, I want those options. But why no video? By implementing these new options, we were fearful of people leaking the videos. No other company on the dark web has the new kind of options we do. This will be much better than your last experience with us. Once you click start on your screen, the timer will be initiated. You will receive a blurred out picture of your wife and will be able to see her present state. After that, we will provide some audio and brief photos along the way. Okay, fine. That is fine. Let's get started. I clicked start on the screen. There she was, blurred out in some areas, but that's her. So beautiful, so precious, so innocent. Rope binds her ankles and hands to a chair. It is a metal chair. Looks like it's bolted to the floor. Good. No possible chance of escape. God, is she pretty. I could hear her whimper in the distance, not knowing what was to come. Man, this is too good. What are my options? Damn it, what are my options? I can't wait any longer. This is what I live for. There they are, finally. An icon for options popped up. Let's see what they are. Wow, 5 options to choose from each round. Last time there were only 2. Number 1, rip off hair. That's too vanilla, doesn't do it for me. Number 2, cut off pinky finger. Now we are talking. Number 3, covered in bullet ants. The most painful ant bites in the world. I could go for that. Number 4, intermittent drowning. That's interesting. I wonder how that works. Last but not least, we have number 5, the stretch machine. Wonderful option. Used it before. If you don't time it right, you can stretch someone to death. Get it just right. You have the ultimate balance of pain and misery while keeping the subject alive. Let's go for the bullet ants. I selected the option. A tub of ants appeared on the screen. Next, I could hear the tub being poured onto my poor, beautiful wife. There were so many ants it sounded like sand coming out of a bucket. Absolutely brilliant. The screams that followed were glorious. There's something thrilling about using Mother Nature's creation on people. The screams intensified as more ants joined in on the stinging frenzy. Wait, what am I doing? That's my companion, my life partner, my true love, mother of both my kids. No, Kyle, stop it. You need this. There's no other way. The bullet ants are doing what they do best, and it's so satisfying. Maybe I should hit the stop button. I don't want her to be unconscious for the best parts to come. I hit stop. The sound of water emanated from my computer speakers. The ants were being washed away. When one door closes, another one opens. Let's see what this next round has in store. My options this time are left arm amputation, tongue removal, eyeball extraction, head piercing, suction suffocation. So many options, so little time. Many I haven't heard of before. Tongue removal sounds unique. I haven't tried that one before. Might bring out better and more terrifying screams. I clicked on it. I could hear medical tools and equipment being prepared for the extraction. The anticipation has me on my toes. Footsteps approach her. A loud metallic clank rings out. Screams followed. Loud, horrific screams. Slightly different in tone this time. Kyle, what the hell are you doing to her? Kyle, I can't go through with this. No, I'm going to do this. That's what I was put here on Earth to do. Next options, please. The various methods populated my screen once again. Now things were getting spicy. We have acid drip, progressive electric shocks, tar and feather, waterboard extreme, and lastly, computer stimulation. Not sure what that last option is, but I already had my mind made up. Tar and feather is a timeless classic, and I can't resist the urge. I couldn't click on it faster. The molten tar filled a large bucket. The bucket was placed above my gorgeous lady. The sound of the rope hoisting it up was music to my ears. The bucket emptied, and I could hear the sound of burning flesh, the sweet searing sound of pain and agony. The screams echoed throughout my room. No orchestra could recreate these magnificent sounds. The dark sticky tar enveloped her body. Now comes the feathers. She was covered head to toe in them. She looked more beautiful than any bird in nature. I marveled at my creation. My lover was now a different creation, a better creation. I need this. I need this for my collection. She needs to be remembered for how pretty she is, how pretty I made her. She was my blank canvas to paint on, and now I've created my masterpiece. I need to screenshot this for my records. Another trophy on the shelf, as they say. I click on my screen record software. No, I won't. I can't. I will get in trouble. That's what they say. If I get in trouble, I won't be able to do this anymore. But I need proof. I need her to live forever. Forever in my memory and in my collection. I clicked on the Snapchat function. No one would be the wiser. Or would they? My screen turned dark and transformed into what looked like a Skype call.
You know you can't take photos, Kyle. Everyone knows that. Damn it, Kyle. It says it right in every contract.
I didn't. I know, but I needed this. You know I needed this. You know I can't help myself.
I have no choice but to bring you in. You will relive every option you chose for your victims. You're dead, Kyle. D-E-A-D.
With that, the Skype call ended. I didn't know how much time I had. I was already getting itchy. The urge to take another victim was overwhelming me again. I would have to do it on my own now. I just hope I can get one last victim before I am caught by the company. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and smash that like button to get notified every time I upload a new video.